Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have an information-packed episode for you today, reacting to what I've called the latest prostitution job done by Patrick Bet-David for the state of Israel. And this was just so disgusting to see. Obviously, for the past 2 years, since October 7th, Patrick Bet-David, the popular podcaster, media figure, multimillionaire, he has his Valuetainment brand. He has multiple YouTube channels, and he has millions of subscribers, millions of views. And since October 7th, he has been pumping out just whore job after whore job for the state of Israel in the most disgusting, obsequious, pathetic way. And the pinnacle of that, you could say, has been this recent interview he did of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the war criminal, a man who is wanted by the international courts. There's arrest warrants for him. He's will be arrested on site in over 100 countries of the world if he ever steps foot in those countries, because he's wanted for war crimes, perpetrating a genocide for the past 2 years against the Palestinian people. And currently, for the past 4 or 5 months, he has been deliberately starving the Palestinian population to death in an effort to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and ultimately occupy and take over the Gaza Strip. So this is something that is so contrary to basic human morality. You don't even have to be a Muslim to recognize the extent of evil that is being perpetrated by this Zionist terror state. And the head of it all is Benjamin Netanyahu. And you have someone like Patrick Bet-David who just rolls out the red carpet, gives him this very softball interview, allows him to just speak and make all kinds of claims with not even the slightest bit of pushback, as we'll see. And so this is just pure propaganda. Valuetainment has just become an arm of the Israeli propaganda machine, the Hasbara machine. So this is what we're going to be looking at today and reacting to and analyzing this interview. But there's some other news items that we want to cover as well. There was a recent shooting today that happened in the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. A Catholic school was attacked, and it's kind of like a hybrid of a Catholic school, a Catholic church, it seems. And you had children as young as 4 or 5 years old in this school, along with older students as well, attending a prayer service or mass, or I'm not sure exactly what was happening, but a shooter comes and guns them down and shot over 50 shots, presumably from some kind of semi-automatic weapon. And 3 children were killed. Many others have been injured. This is mass shootings that happen in the U.S., and this is the most recent case. But what's interesting is that the identity of the shooter has been revealed. It's been released, and now it's making the rounds. And I'll show you who this person is. The suspect responsible for today's attack against the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has been identified as Robin Westman, a transgender Jew in his early 20s. Multiple unconfirmed journal entries and YouTube video screenshots are circulating that potentially indicate the shooter is affiliated with 764, a satanic Order of Nine Angels affiliated misanthropic cult. So a transgender Jewish person named Robin Westman is the shooter, or the suspected shooter. And so I tweeted, what was the synagogue that Robin Westman was attending, or throughout his childhood, or was affiliated with? What synagogue is his family affiliated with? Who is his rabbi? These are things that we need to know. Like, where was he radicalized is the question. And I tag the FBI. This needs to be investigated, right? Based on his religious affiliation. This is what they do for Muslims. This is what they have been doing for Muslims. And investigating masajid, mosques, investigating imams, interrogating, putting on no-fly lists, holding at the border, advanced interrogation, etc., freezing their funds, not the funds of any kind of terrorist or Muslim criminal, no. Anyone he's affiliated with, anyone he may have talked to, any masjid he might have stepped foot in, any imam he might have corresponded with, all become pulled in with this dragnet from the U.S. government through the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. This has been what Muslims have been subjected to since 2001. And guess what? Many Zionist Jews were the ones who were not only proposing these kinds of programs, pushing these policies in Washington, D.C., but also popularizing them, also participating in them to demonize Muslims, to portray Muslims as just a community of terrorists or potential terrorists. That's what Muslims have been subjected to. And as far as I can tell, American Jews didn't really have a problem with this. In fact, they're in support of it. And since October 7th, they've only redoubled and tripled their efforts to attack Muslims, to stigmatize and demonize Muslims, disenfranchise Muslims, and target them. Why? Because American Jews want the U.S. to support Israel in its war and genocide against the Palestinians, but also against Iran, also against Lebanon, also against Syria, and the entire Middle East. They want the U.S. to provide the weapons, to provide the manpower, to provide the funding, to enable Israel to just completely take over the Middle East and to establish hegemony over the Middle East at the expense of the Arabs and the Muslims, who either will be genocided, or they will be starved to death, or they will be displaced, forcefully transferred off of Israel's so-called land, Greater Israel. This is what a huge percentage, not all, but a huge percentage of American Jews are in support of. They want the U.S. to be the driver of this Middle East program for the Zionist state, but they can't do that if the majority of Americans are against Israel. It is going to be politically difficult for their slaves in the U.S. government to support this kind of hegemonic imperial campaign in the Middle East if the majority of Americans are against it. That's the PR problem that Israel faces. So how do you get the American public to back this kind of program, this Zionist agenda? Well, a big part of that, a big part of their script, a big part of their playbook is to demonize Muslims, to portray Muslims as terrorists, to portray Muslims as brutal savages who are out to destroy America, brutal terrorists who are really, their real agenda is to attack America and destroy America. Iran is developing ballistic missiles that can send a nuclear device to America and kill potentially millions through a nuclear holocaust. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu is literally saying on Patrick Bet-David, which we're going to watch in a minute. So this is fear-mongering against who? Against Muslims. In America, turn Muslims into this fifth column, this kind of minority that has to be seen with extreme scrutiny. Even though Muslims are a very small percentage of the American population, and, much to the chagrin of myself and other religious Muslims, they're pretty much assimilated. They're more American than the Americans themselves when it comes to the U.S., the Muslim population in the U.S. That's different than the Muslim population in other countries like the UK or France or Germany. But in the U.S., American Muslims are fully assimilated, as far as I can tell. That's been my assessment being in this country for 40 years. But the point being that demonization of Muslims is a critical component of the Zionist agenda, and any type of excuse to demonize Muslims because of some kind of mass shooting, because of some kind of attack, and many of these, as we've seen historically, have been false flags. These have been false flag attacks to make it seem like Muslims have engaged in mass killing. Not to say that there aren't some Muslims who do support acts of terrorism. ISIS is a real phenomenon. But the thing about ISIS, as I've pointed out many times, is that ISIS is the Islamic basis for ISIS terrorism. This is deviance. This is contrary to Islam. This is something that has been invented as a political tool. It doesn't actually have, there's nothing in Islam that says go and kill random children, random, little boys and girls and women in public places. This is something that Islam allows as legitimate. There's no actual Islamic basis for this. And for over a decade, I've been calling ISIS a deviant group. And I've also pointed out that it seems many of the leaders of ISIS have these connections to intelligence agencies and seem to be, part of this intelligence network. And this is something historically known, that a counter to Muslim Islamism and political Islam, which has been opposed in the Arab world for a century. How do you demonize Islamism? How do you destroy Islamism as a political project? You send agent provocateurs. You send agents into these Islamic organizations, into these Islamic groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, and you have these agents say, I'm a true believer, I want Sharia, I want Khilafah, I want Islamic government. We need to commit terrorism. We need to go and commit terrorism against the population. So this kind of false flag template has been used in the Arab world first and foremost. These agents will try to incite terrorism, and they'll create these splinter groups so that they go and commit these atrocities, and the overwhelming population sees that, these Islamists, they're just going to kill, and they're going to murder, and they're going to even attack hospitals. They're going to attack civilian areas, hotels. So Islamism is bad. We need secularism. This is the pattern that has been used increasingly in the West as well. It's false flag events through intelligence agencies. That's how you generate public support for war against Islam, war against Muslims, invasion and imperialism against Muslims. That's what we've seen over and over again, even predating 9/11. So, and as I mentioned, who's been a big proponent of this kind of model? Their religion, it's Jews, whether Zionist Jews, American Jews, what have you. So now, when this news comes out, we have to be even-handed, shouldn't we? Shouldn't the FBI have the same standards that they have for Muslims, apply it to other demographics? So that's legally, they are not allowed to discriminate against one particular religion. That's contrary to the Constitution. So we should see the same kind of approach, the same kind of dragnet that they use against Muslims should be used against Jewish community. I mean, obviously, this is just making a point. They're never going to do anything like that, but might as well point out the double standards. Okay, so just wanted to cover that piece of news before we get into the show. I also wanted to talk about Syria, but maybe we'll save that towards the end of the show. A lot of updates on the Syrian situation, but we'll get into that later in the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. This is very important so that we can reach you in case the channel gets shut down. So our social media gets shut down. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. You can find the link in the description below. And there's also a reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel. hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we go live or whenever there's a new video. Okay, so let's get into the reaction.
Oh, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Good to be with you, Patrick.
So I have a very simple open-ended question for you. Why are you doing this podcast tour?
Well, number one, because I heard that you invited me. Number two, because I think it's a way to puncture the lies and the vilifications that are leveled at Israel. And I think that's part of the, we have a 7-front war with Iran and its proxies, but this is the 8th front, the battle for truth. So that's why I'm doing it.
It's interesting.
So Netanyahu has been on the podcast tour. He's going on all of these podcasts, and they're all the same. He has all the same talking points. And one of the main talking points is that Israel is fighting your war, America. So this podcast tour is directed at the American public. And the message is simple, that Israel is standing between America and the jihadis and the crazy religious Muslim fundamentalists in Iran, in Hamas, who want to genocide all Americans. And so Israel is this heroic country, this savior of the American people. We're standing in between America and total destruction, total nuclear annihilation. That is the message, and that's literally the title of the podcast. If you go to Patrick Bet-David's channel, you'll see Israel's fighting your war. So why is Netanyahu putting this kind of messaging front and center? This is the same script that Israel has always used. This is the script that they've always used to generate public support for their hegemonic imperial campaign in the Middle East. They want America to support that campaign with funding, weapons, and political support, obviously. So how do you get the American public to support that? You have to demonize Muslims. So demonizing Muslims has always been a central part of the Zionist agenda. And again, one of the things that you may not appreciate is the level of collaboration amongst this network of Zionists and American Jews who perpetuate this at all levels of government, media, academia, the financial sector. All of these different sectors are connected and interconnected and collaborating in perpetuating this kind of demonization of Muslims within American society. And Muslims have been the victim of this for decades, and most acutely after 9/11. So I don't see American Muslims have much awareness of this. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason why, if you look at the American Muslim population, when it comes to American Muslim perceptions of Jews, American Muslims have very positive attitudes towards Jews and Judaism. And this is not something that just happened randomly, or it's not something that is organic. This is something that has been cultivated and developed. And this, who has really developed this? It's been through interfaith. It's been through interfaith collaboration, interfaith dialogue. And that's actually the approach that has been developed by Zionists in order to really pacify all the different religious groups. Mainly it was used against the Christians. Interfaith dialogue. We don't want to debate. We don't want to debate Christians on religious topics. We want to have an interfaith dialogue to understand Christian hatred. Why do Christians hate Judaism? Why are Christians anti-Semitic? We need to have an interfaith dialogue, and Christians have to prove to us that they're not proponents of the Holocaust, proponents of anti-Semitism, and help us understand how the Bible is not an anti-Semitic text, for example. When there are passages that are calling out Jews, Jesus is calling out Jews in the New Testament. Jews are being depicted as celebrating the crucifixion in the New Testament. So that's the model of interfaith dialogue And I talked about it in the recent debate that I had in David Wood. I gave a very brief history of this, how interfaith dialogue was used specifically to take out all the anti-Semitic components of Christian theology, like supersessionism, like the idea that Jews, unless they accept Christ explicitly, cannot be saved, etc. So I went over that very briefly, but that same interfaith dialogue model was applied to Muslims, especially Muslims in the West, especially American Muslims. And you'll see that many of the imams, many of the most prominent imams, have very close relationship with these synagogues and with these Jewish leaders. And the idea is like a good cop, bad cop model. You have the bad Zionists, the bad Jews are the Zionists who are supporting Israel, the ones who want to demonize all Muslims and say that all Muslims are terrorists, all Muslims are Hamas, basically. Those are the bad Jews. But we're the good Jews. We are the good Jewish leaders who want to dialogue with the Muslims. We understand that not all Muslims are terrorists. We understand that all Muslims are not plotting to kill and murder. We understand that. We just want to have dialogue with you. And we know that you're not anti-Semitic, but you have to address the anti-Semitism in your communities, in the mosques. And you have to work with us so that we can rid our communities of hatred. And so this kind of relationship model has been very effective in neutralizing the American Muslim leadership from criticism of Judaism, criticism of the bigger problem. The bigger problem, which is that you have this entire network of Jewish leaders, media figures, government officials that are lobbying the government, working in media, working in academia, and they have collectively are responsible for a demonization program against Muslims and many other things that we could mention politically. So this is, and what does all this serve? This all serves their interests at the expense of our interests, at the expense of Muslim interests, and against the ideals, the liberal ideals of equality and diversity and pluralism. It's also contrary to that as well. But Muslims have been duped, especially American Muslims. So when you see someone like Sohaib Webb, and we have the clip of this on the channel, where Sohaib Webb is at a synagogue. He's a major synagogue, actually, in Boston, like a massive multi-million-dollar synagogue with many wealthy Jews from Massachusetts who attend. And Sohaib Webb, Imam Sohaib, is standing at their podium giving this kind of speech. And he talks about my rabbi, my rabbi. As soon as I graduated from Azhar University in Egypt, in Cairo, my rabbi contacted me. And my rabbi said, what was the topic of the conversation? The topic of the conversation was hatred. How are we going to stop hate? And if you, Sohaib Webb, want to understand the true nature of hatred, come with me and let's take a trip. And he says, my first trip after graduating from Azhar was where? We went to Auschwitz. We went to one of these concentration camps. That's Sohaib Webb is openly admitting this, openly talking about this, as if he's bragging about it. Yasser Qadhi is another one. Yasser Qadhi, if you recall, he was at one of these rallies and he said the true followers of Moses are these Jews. And there were a group of Jews in the audience at that rally. He said, these are the true followers of Moses. Why? Because they are Jews and they oppose Israel, or they oppose Zionism. This is a theologically problematic statement, to say the least. To say the true followers of Moses are Jews, the Jews who reject the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they reject Jesus, they reject the Messiah, they reject the Quran, they're the true followers of Moses today, and you're pointing to them. And recently, Yasser Qadhi doubled down on this, and I posted the clip on my Twitter. And Yasser Qadhi doubled down, and he said, I stand by that statement. I stand by that statement. Yasser Qadhi also visited Auschwitz. Did you know that? He also went on a tour. Maybe I'll pull up the screenshot for you. if you're having trouble believing me. So this was reported in Politico. Imams join U.S. officials at Nazi sites. So you can see here's Yasser Qadi standing there. Here is Muzammil Siddiqui. Here's Majid, Imam Muhammad Majid, who is the biggest agent shill. And it looks like Sohaib Webb in the back is, I assume that's Sohaib Webb. Yeah, that's him. So this was in 2010. Yeah, so this is U.S. officials. I mean, this is worth reading. U.S. officials participated in a trip of 8 Muslim American leaders to the sites of the former Dachau and Auschwitz concentration camps last week in what one official called a transformative experience. The Muslim leaders were experiencing something they knew nothing about. This is a quote. President Barack Obama's envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Hannah Rosenthal, told Politico Tuesday. These Muslim leaders were experiencing something they knew nothing about. Muslims don't know anything about genocide. Muslims don't know anything about mass killing or bigotry, being ethnically cleansed. Muslims don't know anything about that. They have to come and they have to learn from their spiritual superiors, their moral and spiritual superiors. Rosenthal lost many family members at Auschwitz, including her grandparents. I can't believe anyone walks into Auschwitz and leaves the same person. I watched them break down. I broke down in front of suitcases. It is the cemetery of my whole family. The participating imams were totally aware that, quote, totally aware that they were visiting my family's cemetery, and they were very loving about it. At the end, the imams from a broad range of backgrounds issued a far-reaching statement condemning anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, and religious bigotry. We bear witness, quote, we bear witness to the absolute horror and tragedy of the Holocaust, where over 12 million human souls perished, including 6 million Jews, the group said in a joint statement issued after the trip. We condemn any attempts to deny this historical reality and declare such denials or any justification of this tragedy as against the Islamic code of ethics. Beyond Rosenthal, among those from the Obama, Reagan, and George W. Bush administrations who accompanied the imams on the August 7th trip to Germany and Poland were Rashad Hussein, Obama's envoy to the OIC, Nasreen Badat, a State Department official working on religious freedom issues, Marshall Brager, former special assistant to Reagan, for public liaison and his liaison with the Jewish community, and Sohail Khan, an official in Bush's public liaison office. Also participating was Rabbi Jack Bemperod from New Jersey. The trip was co-sponsored by Germany's Konrad Adenauer Foundation. The letter was signed by Imam Abdullah Antepli. So this is Abdullah Antepli is right here standing next to Yasser Qadi. He's also the founder of the MLI, Muslim Leadership Institute, I believe, where they take these American Muslims on a propaganda tour to Israel to whitewash the occupation. So who else signed this letter? Yasser Qadi, Sayed Naqvi of the Islamic Interfaith Center in Washington. Al-Maghrib Institute is like mentioned with Yasser Qadi, Layla Muhammad, Sohaib Webb, and Muhammad Majid, obviously Muzammil Siddiqui, who is the former head of the Islamic, the Fiqh Council of North America, and now Yasser Qadi is in that position. So, what else? So this is what another one of these Muslim figure says. The Muslim faith and community leaders represented the broad diversity of the Muslim American community, including Arab, South Asian, African American, Caucasian, Sunni, Shia, men, women, young and old. Most knew very little about the Holocaust, and all were eager to learn and personally witness the reality of this historical tragedy. So all of the tourists stopped in their tracks. I don't think anyone has ever seen anything like that. The sight of imams praying. So they prayed. I'm sure they had a lot of prayers at Dachau and Auschwitz. Who was their imam, I wonder? Was Yasser Qadi leading those prayers, or was it Suhaib Webb? Yeah, so I mean, this is, you can see the model here. Intersection of government, religious organizations, like you can see the Obama administration, Bush administration. Like, this is something that is a very robust program to make sure that American imams are fully on board against anti-Semitism. Notice how none of these Jewish communities are talking about, or none of these rabbis are gathering to visit any kind of site of a Muslim genocide or a Muslim Holocaust. There's no talk about this. Why not? Obviously, because that will implicate Israel itself. Israel has been engaged in ethnic cleansing and genocidal behavior since its founding in 1948. And then secondly, it's going to detract from the uniqueness, the unique historical evil. No evil can reach the evil of the Holocaust. This is what we are told. This is what we're taught, and this is what our imams are getting trained on. These American imams. So yeah, there's no discussion about Muslim genocide. Rabbis aren't visiting any kind of Muslim sites of genocide to have prayers and to remember. Rabbis aren't discussing the rabid Islamophobia, the rabid anti-Muslim sentiment amongst Jews, or that's found within their religious texts. They're not talking about, oh, the Talmud says that kill the best of Gentiles, smash the head of the best of snakes. This is literally a teaching of the Talmud. Muslims aren't confronting rabbis about these teachings that non-Jews are animals. They're not even human. They can't be considered human because they haven't descended from Adam. How about this theological teaching found within Judaism? Literally dehumanizing any non-Jew that's found in the Talmud, which is the most significant sacred book within Judaism, even above the Torah. So, or the written Torah. The Talmud is the oral Torah. It's part of the Torah, revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai according to Jewish theology. So those aspects in the interfaith dialogue with the Christians, in the interfaith dialogue with the Muslims, those teachings of Judaism never come up. It's all about the anti-Semitism amongst Christians and the anti-Semitism amongst Muslims and the participation of Christians and Muslims in historical genocide against the Jews. Those are the only topics of conversation. This is interfaith dialogue. This is why the American Muslim community has been groomed to be extremely pro-Jewish. Despite being anti-Israel, very, very pro-Jewish. And the contradiction of this, because the Jewish state, Israel is a Jewish state, and its actions are based on Jewish teachings, theological teachings within Judaism. This is a critical, crucial point. This is a critical, crucial point, but none of these American imams will talk about it. Instead, you have Yasser Qadi saying, oh, these are the true followers of Moses. Did he learn that line from Suhaib Webb when they were in Germany, I wonder, praying at Dachau? Maybe. Maybe. So, I mean, you have no clue how bad it really is. You have no clue how bad things really are. I've been trying to warn you about this Dawah mafia and these compassionate imams for a long time. And I get called all kinds of names. I get blasted that, oh, how dare you, Daniel, criticize our beloved imams, and you need to have husn dhan, and they're doing so much good for the community, so much good. We should all get on our hands and knees in appreciation for these imams. Let's continue. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to give you this information because if I don't give it to you, who's going to give you this information? Right? So Netanyahu, back to the interview, Netanyahu is engaged in this public relations tour on the podcast, and Patrick Bet David is more than happy to give him a platform.
Interesting when you say that, because when we look at a couple numbers, if we think about the Pew Research that came out a couple months ago on the unfavorability rate of Israel, they have you 24 out of 5. If I look at the number, Rob, I don't know if you have it to pull it up. If you look at the numbers, you would see the 24-country medium is 62 to 29 being favorable. Why do you think so many countries are unfavorable of Israel today?
I think it's a combination of historical trends, but also of the impact of social media, especially engineered social media with paid bots. And this new media environment that we're in, it has built-in parameters that really take their toll.
So this is quite a interesting, telling infographic from Pew showing that most nations have a negative view of Israel, and sometimes it's very unfavorable. You know, on the blue side, it's extremely unfavorable for most countries. Look at Turkey. Turkey seems to be the most in terms of unfavorability. Only 4% of Turkey have somewhat favorable view. But even in these European countries, like, the tide has shifted so drastically in the past 2 years, and Netanyahu's explanation of this is that, oh, it's bots. it's paid bots. Like, is Pew Research getting affected by Pew bots? Like, their research methods can't bypass any kind of obvious manipulation like that? This is Pew Research. So is he saying that all of these nations are affected by bots through social media? How plausible is that?
But I think the most important thing is that for democracies to fight wars, they should be as short as possible. And my way of combating the PR war is by winning the ground war and winning it quickly. The quicker you win it, the better you'll come out of this assault.
So why do you think this has taken so long? Because if you think a part of it, when you think about especially in America, there's 3 different types of people on social media right now, or in America, that follow you. One, they fully believe you're committing a genocide right now. They're part of the community that's thinking they compare you to some dictators, some terrible leaders in the past, many names you've heard of before. Some of them are blindly supportive of what you're doing, but there's the other community that's almost a little bit burned out, that's wanting this story to end. Obviously, it's tragic. You know, we're seeing what's going on. We're seeing all the stories, but why do you think this has taken longer than it's taking?
Well, I don't think it's taken longer than it's taking. Look at what we had to fight. We were attacked viciously by the most savage attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. That's by Hamas on October 7th. I said on the second day of the war, when Hezbollah joined the fray, I said we're going to change the face of the Middle East, because it was clear to me, and it may be clear to you too, that we're fighting the Iran axis. Without Iran, I would say that all the axis, all the proxies collapse. Hezbollah collapses, Hamas collapses, Assad collapses, and so on. So it was clear to me that we had to topple the Iran axis and not just deal with Hamas. And what happened following that was that we went in, Hamas is in its last breath. We haven't finished it yet, but we crippled Hamas. Then we went and finished off Hezbollah, took out Nasrallah. That led to the collapse of the Assad regime, whose armaments we destroyed. The Syrian army's armaments. We dealt with the Houthis, still dealing with them. And then we had Iran itself, that had struck us, and we had to strike back. And as you see, we changed the face of the Middle East, not only because we hobbled the proxies, but because Iran, which was a totally invincible enemy, throwing its weight around not only in the Middle East, spreading terror everywhere, and trying to arm itself with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to deliver them. We struck them very hard. So when you fight these 4 fronts, and there are another 3, by the way, that I haven't mentioned, when you're doing that, a small country, it takes time. But I think we're approaching the final leg, and that's really finishing off Hamas. We can't have those monsters at spitting distance from Tel Aviv and our communities, and we're going to finish it.
Yeah, so
a lot to unpack there, but he's saying that the brutal Hamas, the worst savages. Just 2 days ago, news came that Israel struck a hospital. Again, Israel has leveled 94% of the hospitals that were in the Gaza Strip. They have been leveled. Imagine that, 94%. So one of the last remaining hospitals in Khan Yunis that is still standing, They bombed the hospital because they wanted to kill 4 journalists. These were 4 Western journalists associated with Middle East Eye and other outlets. And they were hired by Western companies. They were operating and they were documenting the famine. They were documenting the war crimes that Israel is committing. And Israel bombed them while they were at a hospital. So that resulted in their deaths. And then as rescue workers came, as aid workers came to help the survivors pull people out of the rubble, Israel double tapped with a second strike just a few minutes later, killing even more people. So they can't claim that this was accidental. They can't claim that, this was unintentional. No, it was a targeted strike against journalists, a targeted strike against a hospital and rescue workers, medical professionals and doctors and nurses. And so savagery, like what kind of savagery are we talking about here? Like when Netanyahu accuses Muslims of being savages and Palestinians of being savages, like what is his standard for savagery? Because I don't recall Hamas doing anything of this nature. And all of the propaganda, all of the atrocity propaganda that, the beheaded babies, there were 40 beheaded babies, and they're putting babies in ovens, and they're doing this. Now it's clear why Israel had to immediately push out these lies. There was systematic mass rape. They had to push out these lies because they knew that they're going to be engaged in much, much worse. They were going to be engaged in much, much worse. And Patrick Bet-David, by the way, is one of these shills that was pushing the atrocity propaganda uncritically, just accepting whatever Israel was pushing out, all of these claims against the Palestinians that turned out to be false, that were definitively proven false. And we've covered this on many Haqiqat shows in the past. They were pushing that out in order to demonize Muslims, in order to get public support again for Israel. But it didn't work. It didn't work because everything was debunked. Everything was debunked. There was, even at the highest levels of the UN investigators have debunked these claims about October 7th, mass rapes and 40 beheaded babies, etc., etc. So who is actually committing the worst kinds of savagery, the worst kinds of war crimes? It's clear. And it's hard to believe that the world is just watching this, that still no serious sanctions have come from other countries against Israel in terms of the West, in terms of these European countries. They haven't really, it's been very sparse, the kind of response, claiming you're the superior West that's so concerned about humanitarianism, that's so concerned about human life. Where is, other than condemnation that's come late, too little too late, condemnation of the excesses, the worst excesses of Israel's genocide, what kind of concrete actions have been taken to prevent this, to stop this? You've just recognized that it's a genocide. So what? You're sitting by and watching it be perpetrated by these monsters.
When you say that, for a person that lived in Iran, I look at the critics and they're giving, hey, let me tell you, it's not fair what he's doing with this. And you see ICC, which the average person, when they see ICC, 124 countries, that if you step foot in their country, they're supposed to arrest you, okay? And they're calling you a wartime criminal, the offenses you've done, the amount of, again, like I said earlier, they're calling it a genocide. How do you answer to the critics that they don't follow politics, they don't follow the stories closely? But if they see if they see 120-something countries that if you land there, they're supposed to arrest you, the average person is going to say, maybe this isn't a good guy.
Yeah, well, they said that about Churchill, too. He was a warmonger when he was talking about the German Axis and the danger to the West. He said he warned of the slumber of democracies. And I guess if I learned one thing from our history, the history of the Jewish people, is that
Churchill also was a maniac, monster, ethnic cleanser, responsible for 3 million Bengali deaths from famine in World War II. Churchill, and many racist statements, dehumanizing statements against Muslims, against the South Asian Muslims. So, yeah, Churchill and Netanyahu have a lot in common.
You can't sleep. When somebody says they're out to annihilate you, you better take it seriously and act to prevent it. And that's a central lesson that we learned in the rebirth of the Jewish state and the Jewish people in Israel. We don't wait to be annihilated. We take forceful action against our would-be annihilators. And I think that, people see it after you do it.
I mean, this is a critical point. This is a critical point of the Jewish theology, Jewish morality. The idea that we are justified in taking preemptive actions against our would-be annihilators because we are facing an existential threat at every single moment of our existence. And this is not something that is a secular belief, or this is not something that came with the foundation of Zionism or the state of Israel. This is a theological belief from Judaism, that they believe that they're the chosen people of God. And because they're chosen, because they have this covenant, this special relationship with God, that makes all other people jealous of them. Jealous with a kind of hatred that wants to annihilate them, that wants to eliminate them. So anti-Semitism is something that is actually essential to the non-Jew. The non-Jew is always inherently, by birth, by his blood, anti-Semitic, having this kind of jealousy, this genocidal jealousy against God's chosen people. So this is a theological belief. But if you're justified in preemptively attacking and destroying and starving to death and bombing your would-be annihilators, you assume that every non-Jew is a would-be annihilator. Every non-Jew is a would-be killer of Jews. Therefore, you're justified in attacking whoever you want around the world. And this is what people need to understand. Like, this is not something that was developed by Zionists. This is something that is found within their books of theology and what they teach. And you can hear it from the words of Netanyahu. Netanyahu is just not giving you the full context. He's not teasing out the implication, the direct implication of what he's saying. And maybe that's why he's kind of like shifty-eyed and he's like looking down as he's saying this. Because the obvious implication is that every non-Jew is an anti-Semite. And even if they don't show it, they deep down, it's in their blood. It's in their blood. So anyone who has any kind of opposition, if they express, okay, so if Patrick Bet David one day, he says something critical of Israel, that's his as essential anti-Semitism coming to the fore. That's his true nature as a non-Jew, as a Gentile coming to the fore, and that means he's an enemy. That anti-Semitism has the potential to take over, and Patrick Bet David is going to be one of these annihilators, a potential annihilator of the Jews. Therefore, he has to be eliminated. We are justified in preemptively, even if Patrick Bet David hasn't actually done anything, but he simply opposed us, that makes him an enemy and a legitimate target for destruction. And again, like, you might think that I'm just exaggerating or I'm being extreme, but go and watch our video. We have a whole video on this, on Ben Shapiro and Ben Shapiro's lies against Islam and Muslims. Go watch that. It's about 45 minutes in length, and you can see all of the evidence and all of the citations. I'm not going to rehash everything for this stream.
After you do it, after you realize your vision, then people say, well, yeah, we begin to understand it. But they don't before, and that's certainly true of the case here. In the United Nations, you have 180 countries, 190 countries, and a great majority would tell you that the earth is flat. It doesn't make it flat. And the vilifications against Israel is a country committing genocide and other war crimes. That doesn't make it true either. Let me tell you, did you ask me about the ICC prosecution just now? Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you about that. So we were going to have this ICC prosecutor who's since been basically put to pasture. This ICC prosecutor was going to come to Israel in the beginning of the war. And he said, well, Israel has, it has a proper judicial system, and, I don't see any real problem there. And he was about to come. And a day before he's about to come, he suddenly cancels the trip. And 2 days later, he issues this war crimes charge against me and the former defense minister. And we didn't understand, why did he do it? It took us months to discover that a few days before that, he was confronted by one of his staff members, a senior staff members, who brought the charges of rape and sexual misconduct that this prosecutor carried out against one of his staff members, a woman, a Malaysian woman, by the way, who was fiercely anti-Israel. But she had suffered this harassment and these rapes for over a year. And Khan believed that this was his ruin. His brother, who's a British parliamentarian, was in jail for sexual misconduct too. So he said, that's it, that's the end of me. And then he figured out that there's one way to get out of this, and that is to deflect the entire conversation, to preempt it by blaming the Jews and blaming the prime minister of the Jewish state. And that's essentially what he did. Since then, you should know that there have been 4 or 5 other women who charged him with sexual misconduct. So what you have here is the ICC, which is a corrupt organization, totally politicized, unelected, that wants to, basically preempt the sovereignty of nations. And that's why the United States is not a member. They won't tell the United States that its soldiers are committing war crimes because some woke people in The Hague are telling you that. This ICC, this corrupt ICC prosecutor, thought that he would escape justice by basically by condemning us. And that's what he's done. And I think a lot of countries are waking.
Yeah, so these international institutions for justice, like the Hague or the UN, all of these are just corrupt politicians that are interfering with the sovereignty of nations. Oh, okay. Is that your opinion about the Nuremberg trials as well? Is that your opinion about all of the international organizations that have spoken against the Holocaust and have condemned the Nazis and the Nazi collaborators? Is that your perspective on those international organizations as well? Or do you think that, oh no, because it's Jews that are the victims, then that's justified and we have to abide by the dictates of the international legal justice system? In that case. But if it's the Palestinians or it's anyone who's opposed to Israel, then it's just interference and we should condemn them or reject them.
Up to that, it's sort of embarrassing when your chief prosecutor is doing such a corrupt and heinous thing. But that's the ICC. I mean, President Trump has put sanctions on him. He's put sanctions on the judges who did this. I think he's just facing, that's what I like about him. He just cuts to the chase. This is a.
I mean, the whole point, his whole diatribe against ICC is that ICC is biased specifically against Israel. The ICC also condemned Hamas. The ICC also condemned Hamas and accused them of war crimes, and their arrest warrants also issued for Hamas leaders. So what's the bias here? What's the specific pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas bias that Netanyahu is accusing them of? This is not plausible.
Corrupt organization, a corrupt prosecutor, corrupt judges, and it reminds me of that movie. You remember Network?
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yes.
They said, we're not going to take it anymore. And it's not just Israel, because if they target Israel and they say to a democracy defending itself against these savages, you can't defend yourself, then no democracy is safe, and America isn't safe. So I think that's come out. There is extraordinary vilification, extraordinary lies leveled at Israel, and they're meant to prevent us from exercising our legitimate right of self-defense. They won't succeed.
So if we talk about the legitimate right for you to defend yourself, you'll see the numbers. I'm a business guy. I'll see how this war has cost you roughly $120 to $130 billion, whether it's Hamas, Gaza, Iran, roughly $120 to $130.
This piece of shit, Patrick Bet-David, excuse my language, but when he said, I'm going to talk about the numbers, I actually expected, as naive as I am, that he was going to talk about the death toll. He was going to talk about the number of Palestinians that have been killed, the number of Palestinians that are currently being starved to death. I thought that was the logical point to bring up, to push back against this propaganda from Netanyahu. You're talking about self-defense, but the death toll, some of the estimates, even if we go with the most minimal estimates of deaths, it's 60,000 Palestinians. 60,000, that's the minimum estimate. And the actual numbers are closer to 400,000 deaths. 400,000 direct and indirect deaths caused by Israel's military action, caused by Israel's blockade of any kind of aid and medical supplies. 400,000 at least. And this is the estimate given by Lancet, one of the major medical journals, using their low-end estimates for the death toll within conflict areas and war-torn parts of the world, they have models for this, and their model on the low end estimate is 400,000 Palestinians. This is what the Lancet has published, one of the top medical journals in the world. Patrick Bet-David, this disgusting, scum-sucking dirtbag, the numbers he's concerned about is money. He's concerned about money, the business side of it, not the human toll. How can you call this self-defense? This is monstrous. The reason that you're being accused of genocide has a basis. Like, can you explain just the difference in deaths on either side of this conflict, quote unquote? No, Patrick has nothing critical to push back with on any of these basic facts. He hasn't even mentioned a single Palestinian death as pushback. How can you have an interview with Netanyahu and you consider yourself like a serious journalist? You have a serious program. You're asking the tough questions. Oh, I'm so tough. I'm going to get past what's politically correct and ask the tough questions. And you don't even bring up the Palestinians. You don't even mention anything about their plight, the starvation that they're experiencing. You want to talk about business. Like, this speaks to the lack of moral character of Patrick Bet-David. Like, you might think that, okay, yeah, he has, this kind of brand. He portrays himself as this entrepreneur, but there's supposed to be like some kind of moral core there. And he doesn't even bother to mention Palestinians when he's interviewing and giving a platform to this war criminal perpetrating the worst genocide that we've seen in over 100 years. This is inexcusable.
$30 billion reports that we read. Your debt to GDP ratio went from 60% to 75%. So some of the Americans, they're sitting there saying, yeah, we give you guys roughly $3.8 billion. For the war, America's given roughly $30 billion, which most of it was in weapons. But if you're going from 60 to 75%, how much longer can your economy or even the state be able to afford the war?
Patrick, I'm going to have some good news for you.
Please.
I led as finance minister and then as prime minister, a free market revolution in Israel. And Israel became a wealthy country because we unleashed the genius in our population and innovators and just incredible capacity to produce products and services that service all mankind in medicine and communications. That cell phone that you're probably holding half of it is probably made in Israel. And the cherry tomatoes that you eat, they were made in Israel and so on. And medicines that you use, made in Israel. So Israel became a powerhouse, a juggernaut of innovation and enterprise. And it strengthened our economy. We went from $17,000 per capita to about $60,000 in a very short time. It's a tremendous success story. Now, here's the truth. This is something I just saw, a slide. I wish I had it here. Too bad.
I mean, he's avoiding the question. Like, Patrick Bet-David is not asking about the entire history of Israel and economic growth. He's specifically talking about the past 2 years and the effects of war on the Israeli economy. And this is a sore point for Netanyahu because one of the main criticisms that Jews in Israel have, the Jews in Israel aren't really pressed about mass starvation, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. They really couldn't care less about these Gentile Palestinians. They really couldn't care less. What they're concerned about is the economic downturn in Israel. What they're seeing is a massive drop in the economy, in the GDP, and a rise in debt in the country. Israel is facing an economic crisis, and that's what Jews in Israel are actually very concerned about, and they're criticizing Netanyahu, not for engaging in this war necessarily, but for not ending it in a quicker fashion. Like, why is it taking so long? And Netanyahu is there telling them and trying to rally the far right within Israel, the religious right within Israel, and saying, like, look, we have a bigger goal here. Like, we have a bigger goal of greater Israel. We have a bigger goal of eliminating these opposing proxies of Iran, eliminating Iran as well, doing regime change in Iran and installing a pro-Israel Iranian government. That's the larger vision that I'm trying to accomplish. So yeah, we're going to be pressed a little bit economically, but it's temporary. Look at the big picture. That's what Netanyahu is telling his people. So he has to be very diplomatic and delicate when talking about economic issues. But as usual, Patrick Bet-David is not going to push back one iota against the lies that he's spewing.
But the slide shows investments in R&D that a country receives from foreign sources. So number one is the United States, like huge. Number two, in absolute terms, now as we speak, today, is Israel, tiny Israel. The next country is Germany. It's 2/3 of Israel, and the rest of the Western countries fall further and further behind. So our economy is actually doing quite well, I should say, and it's amazing. And you're right to ask it. But there was an economic miracle in Israel, which I'm very proud to have led. And we just have this resilient capacity, both in our economy, but also in our fighting spirit. We've gone through the Holocaust, and I'm committed, as are my people, to prevent a second Holocaust that Iran was planning. And that's what we've been doing in this war. It's taken this long because we had to break this noose of death that Iran was going to put on us in their plans to conquer the Middle East, in their plans to then proceed to Europe, and in their plans to then proceed to America. They say death to America. We're just standing in their way. And boy, did we stand in their way.
So I guess the question to kind of move on from this one, do you see yourself, if you're saying the war is not going on for too long, if this thing takes a couple more years, do you see yourself getting to a point that you're going to need to the American taxpayers and need more money and support, or are you able to sustain the expenditure that you have right now?
Yeah, I think we've organized that, and we're perfectly able to do that. I want you to know one other thing. I think Israel is...
Quickly moves past that. So Patrick David is asking, like, well, are you able to continue this war? Like, you're talking about this massive war against Iran, against all of these other nations around. Are you going to be able... How are you going to fund that? Like, how are you going to... Where are you going to get the money? Is America going to commit that money? And he says, well, we don't have to worry. Like, everything is set. Everything is already set. And that's not going to be a concern. Yeah, it's set. It's set because you own Washington. So they just keep writing the checks. They keep writing the checks to fund this war machine with no pushback, with no resistance. So
different from your other allies. We spend an inordinate amount of our GDP, inordinate amount, to defend ourselves. I think one of your senators said something very, very true. He said, if we had in Israel, next to in Afghanistan, or if we had another Israel there, we wouldn't have spent $1 trillion or trillions of dollars. Israel is receiving and is very grateful for the American military assistance at about $3.8 billion a year, and 80% of it is spent in the United States. That's the deal. So it helps American industries. But we also produce these incredible weapons that we share with the United States. We produce intel that is invaluable for the United States. You're familiar with the Five Eyes, Patrick? You know what that is?
The most number of spies that exist from any country is Israeli spies in the United States. Israeli spies who are monitoring the government, the U.S. government, that are not only through spies, but also technology, a lot of surveillance technology that is deployed, like Pegasus software that has been discovered on the phones of many U.S. politicians. So Mossad is monitoring and spying on the United States. Is that something that an ally does? And if you recall, Tucker Carlson actually was pressing Senator Ted Cruz on this. Like, do you think it's good? Like, is this ally behavior for Israel to have all of these spies operating more than any other country, more than China, more than Russia, more than Iran, more than any other country? You have Israel who's spying on the U.S. Is this something that an ally does? And it doesn't go two ways. He's trying to portray it as like a two-way street. It's a collaboration. No, there is plenty that Mossad knows and intelligence that they have that they don't share with the United States deliberately. They deliberately do not share this information with the United States because they're worried that the U.S. is going to interfere with their plans, with their objective. So what kind of relationship is this? Like, what kind of mutually beneficial relationship that Netanyahu wants to present exists when Mossad, the Israeli spy agency, is spying on the U.S. and they don't share information in the way that he's describing?
All these countries that are part of the American intelligence system, well, there's a sixth eye, Israel. It's a very powerful eye, and we share our intel with the American intelligence services, and that's why the bond is so strong. It's not only a bond of values of our common Judeo-Christian civilization, and it is really a war of civilization against the barbarians that we're fighting, but it's also a bond of utility, of great success. That partnership is very, very strong. I know it's challenged all the time, but it's very, very strong. And you should talk to some of the people in the higher places in the Pentagon. I wish you could talk to the people who share our intelligence or the weapon systems that we share. I think that you'll discover that they appreciate, as we appreciate enormously what America gives to us, and they appreciate what Israel gives to America. Somebody said to me,
what weapon systems are being shared? Like, it's all just one way. American weapons going to Israel for free. And if there's any delay in the shipments, then Israel gets very angry. And like, this is what happened with Biden. Biden for 2 months, and he'll mention it actually, Biden for 2 months put a stall on the shipment of 2,000-pound bombs because Biden was concerned about civilian deaths in Gaza. So there was a stall for 2 months of these 2,000-pound bombs, and this was completely unacceptable to Netanyahu and the Israelis. Like, give us our free weapons, give us our missiles. Whenever we want our missiles, we want more and more missiles. Just hand them over. Like, there's this sense of entitlement that the Zionists have. And Ben Shapiro also was saying that America has to support Israel in this war. Otherwise, there'll be dire consequences for America. Like, there's always this threat. It's always this threat against America itself. So what weapons sharing, what technology is Israel sharing? In fact, the Iron Dome, which is one of the biggest defense capabilities that Israel has to protect against any kind of missile that is coming from the Palestinian territories, or Hezbollah, the Iron Dome is provided by the United States. The THAAD missile system, the anti-missile system, air defense, is also provided by the United States. And all of the missile batteries are replenished by the United States. And Israel refuses to share the Iron Dome technology, which America paid for. They refuse to share it with the United States. So, yeah, you helped us. You spent millions in defense contracts for us to develop an Iron Dome, and we own the technology. We're not going to give it to you. We're not going to share it with you, the United States. Silly Gentiles. Silly Gentiles think that they're going to get our technology. No, sorry. So these are lies. This is all lies that are spread by Netanyahu. Is there any proportionality? Like, is there any proportionality where Israel is gifting their technology to the United States? Like, Israel is developing technologies, top of the line, that they just gift the United States? Is there any example of that? I'm asking any Zionist that's watching this and who wants to claim that Israel and the United States have a mutually beneficial relationship. Show me any kind of proportionality. The United States is giving the best technologies, the most sophisticated anti-air missile systems to Israel for free, helping them develop that technology and replenishing that technology to defend against the hypersonic missiles of Iran, Hezbollah, whoever. What is Israel providing, gifting the United States that's proportional to that? Is there an answer? Let's get some facts behind this propaganda from Netanyahu.
You're the one fighting ally we have. You don't ask us to put boots on the ground. You don't ask us to fight your wars, although President Trump did a great thing by joining in that precise strike that he did. Didn't just start World War III. It didn't bring thousands of American troops on the ground in Iran, but it did. It was a magnificent addition to our brave soldiers. So I have to.
Yeah, it's so convenient that the U.S. never asks for IDF support. No, any kind of war that the United States has, any kind of conflict that the United States has, there's no asking Israel to actually provide anything, to provide weapons, to provide any kind of intelligence, to provide boots on the ground. Is Israel providing anything to the United States in Ukraine? No. No. Is Israel providing any kind of help in the U.S. and NATO's conflict with Russia? No. No. And that's because Israel wants to maintain. Israel does have diplomatic relations with Russia. And they want to keep generally positive relations with Russia. And they're not going to sacrifice that by working more closely with the United States in Ukraine. So, yeah, obviously, the U.S. isn't asking for any kind of boots on the ground from Israel. But the other way when it comes to Israel fighting or having the U.S. fight its wars, that's been nonstop. That's been constant factor within all the major conflicts, even going back to the 1948 war, where the Arab countries, Egypt and Syria, were attacking. Who's supporting Israel? Who's providing Israel with arms? It's coming from the U.S. side. It's coming from smuggling from the U.S. that wasn't stopped, that wasn't prevented. So from the very beginning, the U.S. has been propping up the Zionist state, fighting its wars, providing its weapons, providing finances. And that parasitic relationship is being allowed to continue at the expense of the entire world and to the benefit of who?
To tell you, I think it's a partnership that is going to go on for a long, long time. As far as I'm concerned, for all time.
Prime Minister, what do you say to the critics
For
who say,
all time,
Israel owns America, Israel is who makes America do things they want them to do, whether it's through AIPAC, whether it's through, funding, money. You'll typically hear this. This has been overly said the last couple of years in a major way. And there's a community of Americans that at this point believe that whatever Israel wants, they make a phone call to America, America better do or else. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. I think it's full of hokum. First of all, do you know President Trump? I mean, sort of, I've known him for many years.
Sure.
Okay. You don't make him do anything. He does what he thinks is in America's interest, and he's very forceful about it. When he sees allies who don't step up to the plate, he's not shy about saying it. And we have a different relationship altogether. It's not one of coercion or manipulation. It's one of common interests and common values. And I think that people understand that, because Israel is different. It really is. We know that we have to fight for ourselves, and we do. But when we fight for ourselves, we fight for you too, because we fight Iran. Iran tried to murder President Trump not once, but twice. Iran killed and wounded thousands of Americans with their IEDs, explosive devices, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They bomb your embassies. They burn American flags. They have...
Why? All of these things that he's citing. First of all, what assassination attempts against Trump? This is just another lie that they keep perpetuating. There's no confirmation of any kind of these two. He's not just one, but two assassination attempts by Iranians. I'm sorry, what are you talking about? And then the claim that, Iranian proxies are attacking the U.S. in Iraq and Beirut. Wait, why is the U.S. in these countries? Why is the U.S. have soldiers and Marines in the Muslim world, in these Muslim countries in the first place? Why are they there in the first place? Like, why are they invading and occupying these Muslim lands in the first place? Oh, is it to defend Israel? Oh, is it for the purpose of defending Israel against its Arab neighbors? Is that why? So how is that like? How is that helping American interests when American soldiers are being killed for wars in the Middle East for Israel?
Have mobs chanting, "Death to America, death to America." So when we fight Iran, we're not just fighting our war, we're fighting your war, but we are fighting that war here in the Middle East. And let me tell you what would happen. And as someone who had been in the Middle East as a child, I think you can appreciate this. It's not only we who are threatened by Iran, it's our Arab neighbors too. They know that Iran wants to conquer them, pillage their oil fields, take over the Middle East, the maritime routes that control world trade. So they know that. But if you look at who's actually fighting Iran, it's Israel. It's Israel, our brave soldiers, our incredibly brave soldiers. And this tiny country, President Trump asked me.
So you can see the script, and you might think that, the Americans are so stupid if they fall for this. But he's saying the Arabs as well. They're using the same kind of script for the Arab countries. We're protecting you Arabs, you Sunnis, from the Shia Iranians who just want to take over. They want to just take over the Middle East and convert your children to Shiism. Your children are going to have a love for the Imams and Ali. They're going to convert your children to Shiism, guys. We need Israel to protect us. Please, Israel, come protect Sunnism. Israel, the champion of not only American democracy, but also Sunnism, also Sunni Arab lands. It's Israel. And you think I'm joking, but this is actually what these Arabs are saying. It's actually what the Wahhabi Arabs, the Madkhalis, they're all using this kind of line I mean, this is what's implicit. They say that the bigger threat, like some idiot like Adnan Rashid, saying that the bigger threat, 10 times worse than Israel, 10 times worse than what Israel is perpetrating in Gaza, is Iran. Because Iran is going to do 10 times worse, has done 10 times worse. Iran has killed 6 million Sunnis in Syria. Iran has killed 6 million Sunnis in Iraq. Iran has killed 6 million throughout the Middle East. So this is why we have to be against Iran. We have to be completely against them, and we shouldn't support them. We shouldn't actually, when Israel is attacking Iran, we have to be neutral. We have to be neutral, even though we know that Iran is 10 times worse. So this is coming straight from Netanyahu. This is coming straight from Tel Aviv. Like we're here, Zionism, we're here to protect you. We're here to protect Syria from Iran, from the influence of Iran, the sphere of control. You want another 6 million Sunni Syrians to be killed? No? Okay, then we have to normalize with Israel. We have to, at the very least, we have to have security agreements with Israel. What Sharat is about to sign is a security agreement with Israel. So if you think that, the Americans are so stupid for being manipulated by this propaganda, well, bad news. The Arab Sunnis also, and not just Arabs, I mean other demographics as well. They're falling for it again. It's just shocking. It's just shocking how they use the same script with a completely different demographic. Like, how much in common do Americans have with Arab Sunnis in the Middle East? But the same script, Iran as the boogeyman, and they're falling for it.
How do you guys do this? I mean, you're such a small country. We're the size of New Jersey, bigger than Rhode Island, but that's it. We're slightly smaller than New Jersey, and we take on this enormous empire with all its proxies, this anti-American empire that threatens to kill the president and chance death to America. How do you do this? And I said, well, you're like an enormous lion, almost like a prehistoric saber-toothed tiger. You're enormous. We're not, but we are. We're the.
You're the rat. Like, you're the rat that is burrowing and tunneling, and the rat that comes and bites you while you're sleeping, like sneaks around in the filth and the shadows. That's what Israel is. Is that what you're gonna say, Netanyahu? You're the rat.
The badger. This little animal.
Absolutely.
Badger.
Oh, this rodent-like animal, the badger. I guess the badger is not technically a rodent, but it's rodent-like, wouldn't you say?
When you see a badger being, some tiger or lioness is trying to kill it, and it sort of turns around. It has very sharp teeth, and it knows how to go to the weakness points, to the points of vulnerability of the enemy. And you see these things. I watch NGO Wild.
Yeah, the rat, goes and finds the vulnerability, like by sneaking up behind you and waiting till you're asleep, or waiting for when you're with your children, or like goes after your children, finds the vulnerability. Like, yeah, this is actually very apt description, like from, like, despite himself, he's revealing, like, this is how Israelis have been fighting. Remember the pager attack? All these civilians that were killed in Lebanon because of this kind of terrorist attack, unprecedented terrorist attack of putting explosives in a consumer electronic and detonating it without any knowledge of who's actually holding the pager. Like, is it a 3-year-old girl that's holding a pager? Is it, is the pager in a public place, at a school, at a marketplace where many could be killed or injured? Thousands were killed and injured in terms of casualties by this pager attack from Israel. That's the way that they operate, is through terrorism. Is through the most lowly type of sneak attacks, killing people when they're asleep, in their apartments. Yeah, that's the IDF way. That's the Israeli way. And they're not. And the thing about it is, they're not embarrassed. They're like proud of it. Like Netanyahu is calling himself, yeah, we're rats. We're these rodents. That's how we fight. We're not a lion. Like, we don't have a lion is associated with honor. A lion is associated with being this kind of loyal, honorable creature that you have this kind of awe and respect, because the lion faces the opponent and uses his strength and his ability to dominate. That's why a lion has always, in many cultures, been associated with these positive qualities, as opposed to a rat or like some kind of rodent, which is the opposite. But that's who Netanyahu, in his PR, in his public relations on Patrick Bet-David, he likens Israel to the rodent. It's very telling, isn't it? So look at what they're doing to the Palestinians. You think that they can match up and face the Palestinians in an even fight? No, they have to wear diapers. They have to hide in massive tanks provided by the United States. They have to stay within their, within their bases in Tel Aviv and launch drones, launch all of these missiles. And look at the rising rates of unaliving yourself amongst the IDF soldiers and the Israeli police. They're unaliving themselves at unprecedented levels because they just can't take the emotional trauma of having to go against women and children in Palestine. Like shooting 2-year-olds in the head, sniping 2-year-olds in the head apparently has an emotional toll on some of the rodents, not others. Others seem to relish it and enjoy it. So
when my wife lets me, because she likes to watch cooking shows. Okay, so late at night, after we have this argument, we settle on some compromise. And on Nat Geo Wild, I see these films of this badger, this tiny creature, it's about this big, taking on a lion, and the lion runs away. So Israel is the badger of the international scene. It has.
Yeah, wasn't the lion in his analogy America? Like he's mixing his metaphors. Like I thought America was the lion, so the badger is scaring away the lion. Huh? Interesting.
The fortitude, the will to fight our enemies because of our history. Because for so long we didn't have a state, we didn't have an army, we didn't have the ability to defend ourselves, which culminated in this crescendo of massacres that culminated in the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust, in which a third of our people were annihilated. We have that in our bones, in our hearts, in our soul, and we fight. And that's I think President Trump would like to see more Israels around the globe. Because, everybody who says, America first, I can respect that. But I don't think they want America alone. And if you can have allies that actually share your values and fight for them in various parts of the world, and especially in the Middle East with Iran trying to take over the world, I think that's a valuable addition. So, it'll take time for this to sink in, but it will sink in.
Yeah, the topic of America first, it's become a little bit more clear where people are being put in different groups, America first and America only, and that debate's going on right now, which is a great debate. I actually like listening to both sides make their argument. But you said, do you think President Trump is a type of a man that you can get anything you want and make him do what he wants? I don't think President Trump is. But I do think Biden and others are. So the whole criticism of the fact that Israel, whatever they want, they can call America and have favors being done, I would agree with you on Trump, but with Biden. So maybe a question that I don't think has been asked yet. Putin was asked 2 weeks ago if the war between Ukraine and Russia would have happened under Trump. He said, no, it wouldn't have happened. So for you, would the war and the Hamas attack have happened if President Trump was president instead of Biden?
I don't know. It's a good question, but you said something about Biden that I should just point out the facts. In fact, President Biden supported us in the beginning of the war after this horrific massacre, and he came here, and I very much appreciate it. But as the war progressed and the vilifications of Israel, the distortions on the media began to pile on, he began to take a different course. And when we were just 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way in Gaza, I said we have to go into that last position that they had, where they had organized battalions. It's in a city called Rafah, in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And he said, don't go there. And he said, if you do go there, I'll smack an embargo on you. Now, you're fighting a 7-front war, and all of a sudden you're slapped with an embargo of weapons. That was tough. And
so this was in the Biden administration. They said that Rafah, what he's leaving out is the fact that the IDF themselves were telling the Palestinians in Gaza that you have to go to the south. You have to evacuate because we're fighting Hamas. And if you don't want to be blown up, you have to go south. You have to go to Rafah. And that was the humanitarian zone that was dedicated specifically by not only what Israel is telling the Palestinians to do, but also the UN, also the United States, that this is going to be the humanitarian zone and Israel cannot attack. And we're in the humanitarian zone. There's no Hamas here. There are no Hamas fighters. Presumably, you're fighting Hamas in the north. So do not bomb Rafah. And that was Biden's ultimatum, and Israel violated that. You know, if you tell Israel don't do something, they're going to definitely do it. They don't take orders from the Gentiles and the non-human Gentiles. So that's what they did. And then Netanyahu was shocked. Oh my God, you put an embargo. We're fighting a 7 million war front. You're putting a embargo on us. We can't defend ourselves unless we have these 2,000-pound bombs to drop on apartment buildings. So that, and this was the embargo that I mentioned earlier. It was just 2 months, and then Biden ultimately relented, and then Trump came into office and put all the weapons on fast track. You know, make sure Israel gets all the weapons that they need immediately, no delay.
And I said to President Biden, who I've known for many years, I respect the fact you're the president of the United States, but I'm the prime minister of the one and only Jewish state, and we've been fighting to survive in our small place under the sun. It's been a battle that has been going on for 3,500 years. So I'll have to do what we have to do. And then a few days later, Tony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State, came to Israel, and he said, you know, the president is serious about this embargo. And I said, Tony, I know it's serious because you stopped all the weapons. You slow-walked them before, but now you've stopped them. And then I said to him,
it's a lie. It wasn't all the weapons. It was just specifically the 2,000-pound and the 500-pound bombs. That if you're trying to take out these Hamas fighters, they're not using heavy weaponry. They're not using tanks. They're not using aircraft. They're not using anything that requires a 2,000-pound bomb. The 2,000-pound bomb does so much damage that is disproportionate to who you're fighting. So it's designed, that 2,000-pound bomb is designed for a much bigger fortified target. You're using it on apartment buildings to cause mass casualties to civilians. And that's unacceptable according to international law. It's unacceptable, you know, for our public relations as the liberal administration. And I'm trying to get Kamala Harris elected here. The Democrats are trying to get Kamala elected. And we're being saddled with these images of dismembered children being blown apart in Palestine. And how am I going to explain this? We have to put some lines, some red lines. Don't attack Rafah. Don't attack Rafah. Otherwise, I'm going to put a limitation on these 2,000-pound bombs. And it only lasted for 2 months. It was like barely a blip in this onslaught, genocidal onslaught.
I said, he said, well, how are you going to do it then? I said, Tony, we'll fight with our fingernails if we have to. But we're not going to leave. It's like the Allies would leave a quarter of the German battalions in place and not go into Berlin. And I said, would you take that? Would you take that, Patrick? Of course you wouldn't. So we didn't take it either. We did it against the opposition of the American president. So much for Israel controlling the United States. We don't. But we do seek to control.
So much for Israel controlling the United States. Like, this is the example that he's giving. You got the weapons. Like, it was just slightly delayed. Any type of resistance, any type of even short-lived, like, oh, you know, Mr. Netanyahu, I don't know about this. Like, look at the humanitarian crisis. I don't care about Palestinian children, but look at how it looks on the media, and the United States is being destroyed. Like, our reputation on the international stage is being destroyed because of our support for you and providing you these weapons. So any type of the smallest disagreement with Netanyahu and the Zionist state, that means you're not a true supporter. And as he mentioned before, that you're potentially an annihilator of Jews. That shows that your inherent anti-Semitism is coming out, and that justifies us preemptively getting rid of you, actually.
Control our destiny. And when somebody commits a crime like they did on October 7th, decapitating our men, raping our women and then murdering them, burning children alive in front of their parents, taking 255 hostages, grandmothers with their grandchildren, you know, this horror, and pledge to do it again and again and again. Well, what choice do we have? We have to fight them and their Iranian patrons, and we did just that. We did that first with American help, then with American opposition, and when President Trump came in with great
American opposition, that's what he's calling it now. Biden was opposed to Israel fighting for self-defense.
American help, which I truly appreciate. And I think President Trump does what he thinks is good for America. I don't think.
Notice how he keeps emphasizing, we truly appreciate it. Like, and you can tell that it's insincere. Like, he doesn't really appreciate it. He feels entitled to it. That's what he reveals when he says, when he calls Biden's slowing down some of the weapons, some of the 2,000-pound bombs. He describes that as being like opposition. That shows the sense of entitlement that he has. So then when he turns around and says that, oh, what we really appreciate, what Trump is doing and all of these weapons, we appreciate it. He knows that Trump is sensitive about not being appreciated, America not being appreciated. This was remember when Zelensky of Ukraine went to the White House and he grilled Trump and Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance were grilling Zelensky like, you haven't even said thank you for all of the aid that the U.S. is providing Ukraine, all of the weapons that we're providing. You haven't even said thank you. Like, Trump made a whole stink about that. So Netanyahu knows, and the Israeli public relations establishment knows that Trump is very sensitive about being shown appreciation and gratitude. So he keeps emphasizing in this public relations tour, this podcast tour, Netanyahu wants to assure the Americans, we really appreciate it. Hand us over the weapons, Goy. Hand us over the weapons, you human cattle. Oh, we really appreciate it. We really, and if you dare to limit the missiles that you're giving us, then watch out. Watch out. But we really appreciate it. Trust me. This is very transparent, the animosity that he has. But it's, if you're aware of this kind of Judaic theology and how they understand non-Jews, then you'd know that this is their attitude.
I know that for a fact. He's a great leader.
So going back to that, I want to clarify this again. So you said you don't know whether Hamas October 7 attack would have happened under Trump. So you're saying Hamas would have had the audacity, even under Trump, to have attacked, or no, they would have feared him?
Probably not, but it's hard to say with these maniacs. You can't quite tell. I think Iran would have been more careful, and Iran is the patron. Would they have controlled completely their client, their proxy? Maybe not. Maybe they would have, possibly. But look, I think President Trump has changed the posture of America. America is back on the global scene. America is resumed its powerful position among the nations. And I think that's for the good. Because I think one of the tragedies for the Jewish people was that in the first half of the 20th century, America was not the dominant global power. And the worst tragedy in the history of mankind, the World War II, took place, and I don't think it was accidental. And the worst tragedy in the history of my people, the Holocaust, took place. But in the second half of the 20th century,
you had to like walk that back. The worst tragedy in the history of the human race, actually, I think, is the Holocaust. Isn't that what you were going to say? Isn't that what you're going to say, Netanyahu? And then you kind of, for my people, the worst tragedy for my people. No, I think you think, and what we see. Remember when we were reading that article about the imams going to Auschwitz? Like, Muslims have no clue. No one has any clue what Jews have experienced and the genocide that they've experienced. Muslims have no clue the level of hatred and anti-Semitism. No one knows. Only we do. Only we know the extent of pain and suffering, because it is unique. The Holocaust is unique, and get it through your thick skull. That's what he was planning to say, and I think he realized, and he walked it back. The greatest tragedy was World War II. Yeah, okay. I'm sure you have plenty of sympathy for the other victims of World War II on the German side, on the Russian side, on the Japanese side. It's not just the Holocaust, right?
America emerged as the dominant power on the earth, and Israel came into being. And as a result, our history has changed. We no longer are massacred with impunity. We now have the ability to defend ourselves. And we are very fortunate to have an ally, a strong ally, the United States, with successive presidents. We've had our differences, as I said. But overall, there's been a very strong alliance through all presidents. But it's never been stronger. It's never been so intimate and so powerful as it is now under President Trump.
You've been prime minister while President Clinton was in the White House, Biden, Obama, and Trump twice. Is there an element of unpredictability with President Trump that you don't know necessarily what he's going to be saying next? Or do you notice a pattern of, similar approaches that they all take?
Well, look, I think President Trump has an enormous capability. He's irreverent to received wisdom, to traditional thinking. He says, well, let's look at it again, and sometimes he can surprise you. I'll tell you, I had conversations with him when he cuts to the chase on something, and he says something that no one before said. A lot of people felt in their gut, but they didn't have the guts to say it out loud. And he does. And, I find that...
Okay, this is just Trump glaze. This is not worth listening to. And Patrick Bet-David is constantly glazing Trump as well. So maybe like 25% of this interview is about how Trump is amazing. He's such a strategic thinker. He's a maverick. So this is boring stuff.
If they want to leave, let them leave. And for those who stay, rebuild Gaza. I thought that was actually a very sensible thing. And it's not our goal now to depopulate Gaza and all these other nonsenses that people say. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas, free it from Hamas tyranny and terror. And we now have Gazans. I'll bet you don't know this, Patrick. We now have Gazans fighting Hamas. And they say, thank God you're here. They didn't dare do that until the final stages of this war, which we're in now.
I mean, if insofar as there are any Palestinians that are fighting with Israel and the IDF, obviously there are Wahhabis who are Palestinian Wahhabis who side with Israel against the Rafidi Hamas. We know that. We know that Wahhabis are backstabbers of the Ummah, and they will not stoop. They will not hesitate to stoop so low as to allying with Israel. They're the Wahhabis. And then any other Palestinians that will collaborate with Israel, it's because Israel is taking their women and children, like literally your children are being kidnapped by the IDF and being used as hostages. Do as we say, be spies, do what we want, otherwise we're going to murder your children. That's the way that Israel has always operated, is through hostages, blackmail, through systematic rape, through putting people in dungeons, torture dungeons. The worst kind of torture that you will find in the world is happening in Tel Aviv, is happening in these prison camps in Israel. So, yeah, these are the Palestinians that are, collaborating with the Zionist state. What else do I want to say? Yeah, just talking about Trump and taking American takeover of Gaza to rebuild. If the whole point was to take out Hamas, then why has Israel leveled all of Gaza? Like 90% of the buildings within Gaza have been completely destroyed. So how can Palestinians live? The non-Hamas Palestinians. According to the Israeli media establishment, speaking in Hebrew, when they broadcast on Channel 12 or wherever, they say all the Palestinians are Hamas. All the Palestinians, including the women and children, they're all, even the babies, they're Hamas. And they deserve what's coming to them. They deserve to be genocided and wiped clean. Wiping clean the land and making room for Israeli settlers. Like, that's very clear in Israel that that's the plan. And that's all been stated from the very beginning by the Netanyahu government. But when you're having this public relations tour and on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, you can just spew whatever lie, saying, "Oh, we want the Palestinians to return. They deserve to live in Gaza." That's what he's saying, but the exact opposite is said within Israeli media.
Because they know that they won't be slaughtered, so they fight. They actually fight Hamas. They fight these monsters. They call them monsters, and they're joining up with Israel. And I think that's a sign of hope, because we can have. Once we finish off Hamas, Gaza can have a different future. Israel and Gaza can have a different future. And as far as I'm concerned, if America wants to come in and invest, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
So you would be okay if America takes over Gaza and it becomes something that we control. You'd be okay with that?
Yeah, but it's an American choice. I don't want to get into that.
But you would be okay with that. So even if America chooses...
Look, I'd be okay with any governance, that civilian governance in Gaza, that doesn't teach its children to annihilate Israel, doesn't pay terrorists. That's what not the Hamas do only. It's what the Palestinian Authority, the other side of the Palestinian people, does. They pay terrorists. The more Jews they kill, the more they pay them, and doesn't launch terrorists. There are several ideas how to do that. But I think that I think that America's help here is indispensable.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, because if all of a sudden that becomes U.S. territory, and U.S. now has interest in making sure there's not chaos there, that could actually be very effective for a lot of people in the community. I lived in Iran for 11 years, and maybe this is a transition. I got 3 other topics I'd like to talk to you about.
What an idiot Patrick Bet-David is. Like, you think that's really on the table? Like, you think really America is going to go and take over Gaza and be stationed there? Like, how stupid are you that you're like taking this as a real possibility? Like, Donald Trump just stated that, like, without any kind of actual plan, because he says stupid things. Donald Trump will just say something stupid to shake up the conversation, and this is part of his negotiation strategy, to say something so extreme that he changes the bargaining table within the debate between Israel and Palestine in the international community. He said something so bizarre that, yeah, we're going to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, and yeah, we're going to rebuild it. We're going to use American troops. There was no actual plan for doing that. There was no actual plan. This was just a way to pressure the Arab states like Egypt and Saudi Arabia to agree to take in the Palestinians, because that's a better option for them to take in the Palestinians and agree to forcibly relocate the Palestinians than the alternative of the U.S. going in there and controlling Gaza. So, but Patrick Bet-David, and this is from months ago, he's still stuck on this remark from Trump in that press statement.
Is when I lived in Iran for 11 years, I was born in 78. The Shah was leading Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. And when you look at the stats,
all right, this is also nonsense. Let's move it along here.
In fact, I think we have, because I think the Knesset passed a resolution to that.
That interested in the story, except for people from my community. To the last question I have with you, this is the one challenge I personally have. My audience is not going to be that interested in this story, except for people from my community. The Holocaust has been recognized by 193 different countries, right? Everybody around the world. And in some countries, if you deny it, you could do jail time. Many countries, you can do jail time 1 year or 5 years. But for anybody that doesn't recognize Armenian Assyrian genocide, if there's any country that I would have expected to be on the list that recognized the Armenian and the Assyrian and the Greek genocide, it would be Israel. Why haven't you yet recognized the Armenian, Assyrian, and the Greek genocide that the Turkish did to that community?
In fact, I think we have, because I think the Knesset passed a resolution to that effect.
I don't know if it's come from you, though. I don't know if it's come from the Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
Here you go.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that.
Well, I just did. Like, what? What? So, and Patrick Bet-David is just satisfied with that. Like, like that's the condemnation of, or the recognition and condemnation of the Armenian genocide. And Patrick Bet-David is, as an Armenian, half Assyrian, he's satisfied, like, with those crumbs, like with that, like throw away. Yeah, okay. Well, I just you want me to recognize? Okay, I just did. And Patrick, oh, thank you, Netanyahu. Oh, you recognized it. You recognized the Armenian genocide. That's so great. Thank you so much. PBD looks so pathetic. And the reason that Israel hasn't recognized the Armenian genocide, the claimed Armenian genocide, I should say, from 1915 to 1917, they claimed that over 1 million Armenians were forcefully evacuated and killed. And this constitutes a genocide by the Ottomans. And obviously, the Turks deny that this was a genocide. Interestingly, Turkey recognizes that hundreds of thousands were killed. Hundreds of thousands of Armenians were killed, but they said that this was part of a security measure, given that the Ottomans were facing an existential threat in World War I. And the Armenian Christians, they posed a security threat to the Ottoman Empire. So it wasn't a deliberate genocide. It was security measures that were taken, and therefore it's not a genocide. So why doesn't Israel, you'd think that Israel would come out and support their Christian, the Judeo-Christian values, right? Support the Armenian Christians against these barbarian Turks. And this is what is the question mark for PBD. Like, why? Why? I'm willing to recognize the Holocaust and go to bat for Israel, but can you just throw me a bone? Can you like throw me this crumb of recognizing the Armenian genocide? But why hasn't Israel historically recognized the Armenian the Armenian genocide as such? Is because they don't want to alienate Turkey. They don't want to alienate Turkey. They view Turkey as a strategic partner. Turkey was the first Muslim country to recognize Israel before any other country. And so they don't want to alienate Turkey, and they don't want to put a strain on the diplomatic relations that they have with Turkey. They also don't want to put a strain with Azerbaijan, because about 30% of Israel's oil comes from Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan is opposed to Armenia. They have a land dispute with Armenia. So Israel sides with Azerbaijan against the Armenians. So they're not going to recognize the genocide because that will potentially threaten or complicate their relationship with Azerbaijan. So 30% of oil to Israel is coming from Azerbaijan through pipelines through Turkey. But now... Oh, and then the third reason, I forgot to mention, the third reason that they don't want to recognize the Armenian genocide is it threatens the uniqueness of the Holocaust. We know that the Holocaust was the worst genocide, the worst evil imaginable that could ever happen to anyone in world history, cosmic history. So if you start recognizing other genocides of other people, especially Christians, then that threatens the unique nature. You dilute the significance of the Holocaust if you start talking about an Armenian genocide. So yeah, Netanyahu now is willing to throw a bone like, I just did. I just did. So what do you want from me? What do you want? So he's willing to throw that bone now. But why now? Why now? It's because it seems like there are some sour relations developing between Israel and Turkey. It seems like there's been a rift that's been created, maybe over the situation in Syria. Israel wants to have a monopoly of control over Syria, and they're pushing back against Turkey. We don't want Turkish influence in Syria. And this is causing some frustration on the Turkish side. And Israel is saying, you know what? We're just going to recognize the genocide, the Armenian genocide. Yeah, that happened. That happened. We haven't recognized it for, 75 years, but now we're gonna recognize it just to jab Turkey and annoy Turkey. And in fact, the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they put out a statement condemning Netanyahu. They said that we condemn Netanyahu's recent statements recognizing the Armenian genocide. So this is a diplomatic row between the two countries. That's good news. I mean, for Muslims, let's see, is Turkey going to actually do anything? Is Turkey actually going to put some pressure on Israel? Like 30% of the oil to Israel is coming from Turkey. Turkey can just turn off the spigot. And they haven't been willing to do that because that's going to put them in trouble with NATO. And Turkey is obviously a NATO state. So this is the sad situation that we find ourselves in with the Muslim countries, the Muslim leaders, the Sunni Muslim leaders. This is what we can expect from them.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. That's important to me. And I'm sure a lot of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks around the world appreciate you saying that. Prime Minister Netanyahu, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. I mean, if you're asking about like the history of the Armenians, again, like even the Turkish side recognizes that hundreds of thousands were killed. They just denied that it was officially a genocide. Like there was an intent, specifically, we're going to go and kill Christian Armenians and Assyrians because we don't like Christians. Like that's what's being denied. And with the definition of genocide, the international legal definition of genocide, there has to be an intent. So they're questioning whether there was actually an intent to target Christian Armenians on the basis of being Armenian. But what's often left out of the conversation is that there's a long history going back to the 17th century of Muslims in the Caucasus Circassian Muslims, Chechen Muslims, Dagestani Muslims, Tatar Muslims being massacred in the hundreds of thousands and millions, being massacred and displaced by Russian Christians, by the Russian Tsarist Empire. And the Russians and Ottomans had over 11 wars since the 17th century up to the 19th century. 11 different wars, and many Muslims were forcibly displaced and massacred in this region of the world, in the Caucasus, and the Balkans. So that's the context. And many Christians that were living side by side with the Muslims in these areas, they collaborated with the Russians. They collaborated with the Tsarists, and what resulted is millions of Muslims being displaced and massacred. So that's the context. That's why the Ottomans in World War I, as they're facing the existential crisis, their claim that, yeah, this was a security reason. That's why we have no inherent problem with Armenians or Christians or Assyrians, but this, given the history of collaboration, we're concerned. We're concerned about this element, the Christian element within our society, and they were displaced. So, and admittedly, many thousands were also killed. So that's the historical context. That might be a little bit too much for Patrick Bet-David to understand. But yeah, so that's the reaction. That's the reaction to his discussion. So if you go to the comment section of the video, Patrick Bet-David's video, let me just read some of these comments. The top comment right now says, not a single question on Gaza, the civilian killings, the leveling of Gaza, starvation, occupation. Not a single question. That tells you a lot. That's the top comment, has 5,000 likes on the channel right now, on the video. The second top comment, Epstein didn't come up at all. Didn't mention Jeffrey Epstein. Patrick, why? That has 3,000 likes. 3,000 likes. The third comment, PBD now classified as propaganda. We see right through this, dude. What a shame. 4.6 thousand likes. Honestly, PBD's kids should look at their father and be absolutely ashamed of him. That has just 200 likes. Most obvious damage control run of all time. PBD is propaganda. What in the propaganda is this? PBD asked 0 questions about the actual genocide. Think about that for a second. Thank you, PBD, for showing the world what you are. Let the boycott of PBD begin. The public is aware of the truth. PBD has definitely sold his soul to the devil. Miss when YouTube showed us how many dislikes a video had. Not a single question about everything, LOL. That has 2,000 likes. Winning the groundwork quickly, says the guy who has committed genocide for the last 2 years. PBD is propaganda. Nothing else but propaganda after this. Netanyahu decided which questions are to be asked. Didn't expect you to throw straight softball questions. Why didn't you ask him about international journalists who aren't allowed into Gaza? So that's literally, I didn't skip any comment. I just read you the comments down the line. So if you want to see, let me show you this. Oh, hold on. Let's see, hold on. See? All the comments are negative against PBD. Definitely sold his soul to the devil. So yeah, there you can keep going down too, and I don't think the Nelk Boys interview was less humiliating than this. Congrats, you reached a new level of sordidness. This is a monologue, not an interview. This dude would do anything for viewers and money. He's no different than mainstream media. You're the system we all hate. What a joke, PBD, you lost me. Oh, I guess someone looked at the dislike. There's way more dislikes on the video than likes, as expected. PBD, don't forget to wipe your face after BB is finished. Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said on Twitter. And I ratioed Patrick Bet-David when he announced his... when he announced the interview. So let me pull that up. Yeah, it's a crude remark, but sometimes being crude is justified. Just had a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. He made a statement that will shock the world. Stay tuned. It's like, look, doesn't this guy look like Shaitan? Like, look at his face. And then look at Patrick looking like this. This is humiliating. So I said, don't forget to wipe your mouth when he's done. It's like a brutal ratio. Like his tweet is seen 3.3 million times, and he only can get 11,000 likes on this. And I bet a lot of that is bots, Israeli bots. And then my tweet only seen a fraction of the amount of times, only 166,000 views, but 18,000 likes. So it was a brutal ratio. And, very unpopular. So Patrick doesn't care. He doesn't care that he's torching his reputation. And I don't know, like his business partners and investors aren't publicly known, but I can guarantee you he has a lot of Jewish investors. I can guarantee you a lot of his business partners are from a particular ethnicity and religious affiliation. I can guarantee you, because that's the only thing that really explains how he will torpedo his entire brand. His entire brand has been counter to the mainstream, being outside of the mainstream and not being controlled. That's been his entire brand since the COVID era, because he was one of the few channels that would actually question the COVID narrative. So he's supposed to be one of these alternative figures outside of the mainstream who can be trusted because he'll tell the truth, no matter how politically incorrect it is. And he's just destroyed that reputation. For what? For what? I guess it has to be money. People ask me like, oh, well, Daniel, do you regret going on PBD? Well, I didn't know that at that point that he was going to be this kind of Zionist shill. There wasn't that kind of indication at that point. So, but obviously he had the debate on PBD, and it's still one of the most watched videos on his channel, which is probably something that he didn't expect. But you'll notice, like, after that, he didn't have any more Muslims. He didn't really have any more Muslims on his channel. I think it's because he got too much backlash. You know, you had Daniel, you platformed Daniel, this this extremist anti-Semite Daniel. Probably got a lot of pushback, and to pay for that mistake, he hasn't had a Muslim back on his program. Okay, so that is the show. I did want to talk about Syria. Do we have time to talk about Syria? I guess I won't give you a full analysis. Maybe next week we'll get into it, but I want to show you what some of these people who were optimistic about Syria since November, what they're now saying. And I can tell you that the party's over. The party's over, and there's a lot of shock about what is happening. And I want to show you one example. This is Bilal Abdul Karim. He is one of the journalists who has been operating in Syria since the beginning of the Syrian revolution back in 2011, 2012. And he, I respect this brother, Bilal, because unlike a lot of these Arab ethno-nationalists, Arab supremacists, Wahhabis, he actually was honest in saying that when it comes to Ahmed Shara or Jolani, yeah, we're optimistic. I'm happy that Assad is gone. The brutal dictatorship of Assad is over. But are we going to really be sure that Jolani is going to be better? That the situation is going to be better in Syria? Let's wait and see. So he expressed skepticism in the same way that I express skepticism. I don't think he expressed as much skepticism as I did. But he wasn't one of these fanboys. He wasn't one of these people saying, oh, the Blessed Revolution. Oh, this is first Damascus, then Jerusalem. Like, he wasn't spreading this propaganda like these other compassionate imams, the Dawah Mafia, and these losers. He wasn't actually on that train. And so I respect him for that. And now he's one of the few who's actually pointing out how bad things have gotten within Syria in just 7-8 months. So let's listen to what he has to say. He's giving this update. This is one of the first videos. He put out a series of videos. The revolution was supposed to be about justice. Bilal Abdul Karim criticized the way Muslims accused of being ISIS are killed instead of being arrested and tried in Syria, arguing that this contradicts the principles of justice.
Brothers and sisters, from what I've always known about Islam, you cannot aid and abet these people against Muslims. Now, some people will say, okay, well, wait a minute. ISIS were Khawarij. All right, I don't know that. I mean, in other words, I don't know if this person was ISIS, and you don't know either. Whatever happened to arrest, put on trial, whatever happened to that? Maybe this all got lost in the sauce somewhere and all, but nobody wants to talk about what this revolution was all about. I thought this was about justice. So what would have been the problem? Just to arrest him, put him on trial, and then if you have to hang him or death by firing or what have you, then we have something. But we're doing a capture operation for a man and a Muslim woman that we understand to be Muslim to basically just go in and do whatever they want to do. They beat up the Muslims. They stole their gold, took their money, broke up their house. What's going on? Now, here's the deal. I feel that the brothers and sisters here in Syria have got to start to say, okay, look, Ahmed Shara, you're the president. We're with you. We're with you. We're with you. But you have to start answering some questions. We can't continue that these non-Muslims, not only just non-Muslims, it's not like it's like, really, there's Islam? I don't know. I never heard about it before. Tell me something about it. I want some dawah. Donald Trump ain't asking for no dawah. Donald Trump is killing the Muslims in the Palestinian territories alongside the Israelis. And I got to tell you something. I don't know if Ahmed Shara knows this or not, but I got to put it to you straight. Yo, when you're working with the Americans, the Israelis are not far behind. I'm not saying he's working with the Israelis. I'm not saying he's working with the Israelis. I'm not saying he's working with the Israelis. What I am saying is that I know how the Americans operate and how they think.
So, I mean, so much that can be said. So what's happening is that the US and Israel actually are operating in Syria and just doing whatever they want, taking out targets, and maybe they coordinate with Ahmed Shara's government or not. They're raiding villages. They're going after their political targets. And these are Muslims. And this is, where is the justice? Like, where is the rule of law? Like, where is due process? This is what Bilal Abdul Karim is saying. He's saying that if Ahmad Shara is going to be better than Bashar al-Assad, if there's really going to be any kind of improvement in terms of the country for Syrians, there has to be justice. And the very basic foundation of justice is that there needs to be due process. If someone's accused of a crime, like being a part of ISIS and plotting with terrorism with ISIS or whatever, then that person needs to be first charged with that crime. He needs to face a judge. There needs to be evidence that's brought. He needs to be convicted. And then he can face the consequence. That's due process. That's justice according to the standards of Sharia, according to Islam. You don't just allow America, non-Muslims, to come in and kill someone and they say, well, we can do that because he was ISIS. We just say that he was ISIS, therefore you have to believe us. So this is what Bilal is concerned about. He's saying that this is exactly the kind of extrajudicial targeting and killing that Bashar al-Assad was involved with, and all of these Arab tyrants throughout the Arab world and in many parts of the Muslim world are involved in. So this is not an improvement. This is not some kind of Shari'i Islamic revival in Syria. And look how charitable he is. We have to tell Ahmad Shara, we're with you. We're with you. We're with you. Even though you're doing everything to betray our trust, we're still with you. We're going to fall for it again and again and again. I mean, Bilal has no choice but to say this because Bilal is in Syria, and if he's not careful, he's going to see what kind of lack of justice actually exists. And especially given the fact that the American government has targeted Bilal himself. Bilal Abdul Karim has been the target of the American government with drone strikes. And Allah has preserved Bilal and protected Bilal from the American drone strikes against him, targeting him to such an extent that he even went to the U.S. court systems to sue the American government for trying to kill him as a U.S. citizen. His lawsuit against the U.S. government wasn't successful. But, I mean, this is... Bilal is someone who's speaking from a lifetime of experience, and he's been in the thick of it, and he still has this kind of husn al-dhan saying that, oh, well, America is not even working necessarily with Israel. Necessarily. Like, obviously we know that they are, like America and Israel. Like, Israel is the master and America is the dog. America is the dog on the leash. So everyone knows that. So when America is operating and telling the Syrian government do this and do that, when you have American congressmen going to Syria and signing agreements with Syria, with Shara, saying that you need to crack down on extremists, and Shara is agreeing to that, and now the U.S. is involved in all kinds of extrajudicial detainment, kidnapping, execution. Of course, they're going to claim whoever that they kill is ISIS. Whoever they kill is an extremist. That's what they'll always claim. And if you're a Muslim government, you're supposed to defend your people. You're supposed to defend the Syrians who are in your country who have rights. They're supposed to have rights. Isn't this like a constitutional model, like a citizenship model? You have to protect your citizens. You have to protect your residents. They have rights. There's a rule of law. You can't just let another country come in and start executing whoever they want and just claiming, well, that's an extremist. That's why we did it. So, and you see in the comments, the Syrian or Jolani simps, you ever heard of the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Have some patience. It's not even been a year yet since our victory, and you want justice for everyone, including ISIS? You are literally playing into the hands of the kuffar who want us to go against. So look, the simps, they come out. The bots come out. And then Bilal says, if we aren't going to strive for justice for everyone, then what was the revolution for? Pretty simple response, decisive response. It was against ISIS, brother. What are you talking about? Who said it was against ISIS? So whoever the U.S. claims is ISIS, we just have to believe that without any due process, without any kind of trial system, court system. We just believe that. Guess what? The United States says that Hamas are terrorists, that Yahya Sinwar was a terrorist, that all these Palestinians who support the resistance are terrorists. They say that as well. Should we believe that as well? Bilal says, who said it was against ISIS? Did the judge say that, or are we supposed to take America's word for it? I'd like to know. Okay, so this is the kind of backlash you get if you have anything critical to say about Ahmed Shara. Even when he's engaged in the most obvious betrayal of Syrians, the most obvious betrayal of Islam. The guy literally has as the national symbol the pagan god Baal as the national symbol of Syria. But no. Excuses. We have to make excuses. We're with you. We're with you all the way. Okay, so this is another video.
They need to start in Syria. They need to start asking some serious questions. Do we want to continue down this road? Is this what we want to do? Because I'm going to tell you something. We are quickly going down a path that will lead us back to Bashar. Not necessarily Bashar al-Assad, but something worse than Bashar al-Assad. Ask the Egyptians. They didn't think anything was worse than Hosni Mubarak. But then they got Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. So I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, does
this sound familiar?
What we have to do.
Does this sound familiar to you guys? Who was saying this? Who was saying this back in November and December? And you called him an Iranian Medkhali agent. Is Bilal an Iranian agent too? Is Brother Bilal? Maybe he's an Iranian Medkhali. Maybe he's secretly working for Khamenei, actually. Is anyone claiming that? Because when I said the exact same thing 8 months ago, that's what you accused me of, right? These Jolani simps.
Not only Syrians, but as an ummah, we have to start to ask, Ahmed Shara, everybody was happy back in December that, you took over, you declared yourself as the president. All right, fine, no big deal. You wanted to start making some moves to bring economic benefit to the country. Again, fine. But now we're doing something different. We're pulling off kill operations in Muslim towns where people get affected and Muslim women are being abducted by non-Muslims, and we don't know what's going on. You didn't tell us anything which happened at the Al-Bab operation. You didn't tell us anything that took place the other day. I mean, what's up? What are we doing here? And I think that if we're not going to do that, you know who's worse than Bashar al-Assad? Watch out, guys. I'm getting ready to say something here. I'm going to tell to you. Do you know who's worse than Bashar al-Assad? Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu's controlling much of the southern part of Syria. I'm talking about Quneitra. I'm talking about Suwaydat with his guy Hejri, who's running the show in Suwaydat. There's only the no man's land of Dara, which has no real Damascus troop presence there and is just there for the taking. So I'm saying to you is that we have to try to figure out what we're doing, where we're going with this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
So who's worse? Is Netanyahu worse than Bashar al-Assad? A lot of these Jolani simps, they won't agree to that. A lot of the Syrians won't agree. They actually think Netanyahu is better. Because Assad and Iran, they're the worst. Adnan Rashid will acknowledge with facts and figures that Iran is 10 times worse than Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. So is it actually that bad for Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel to occupy and control all of Syria? Is it really that bad? Because I think Iran is much worse. I'm just seething. I'm just seething as an Iranian because I'm so angry that Iran was kicked out of Syria. That's the basis for what I'm telling you, and Bilal as well. Bilal is seething because Iran is no longer in Syria, and we don't realize that Benjamin Netanyahu, yeah, he has some faults, sure, but he's still better. He's way better than what there was before. This is literally what you have these Syrians arguing online. This is not an exaggeration. They really do think that, yeah, Well, we had no choice. This is not that bad. This is not that bad. And Bilal, like, now finally he's ringing the alarm bells. I mean, he's saying, well, economic deals are made. No problem. That's what he said, right? Economic deals, no problem. Yeah, those economic deals are a problem, actually. The economic agreements and the security agreements and all of this work with the United States that I was calling back in March. They were happening back in March and April. I was the one who was saying this is a bad sign. This is basically shows that Syria is going right back into the pocket of America and Israel, just like Jordan. That's why I called it Jordan 2.0. So those were the signs that this is eventually going to happen. And in the initial agreements that the U.S. made with Syria back in April of 2025, the U.S. made the Syrians agree that there could be no extremists operating in Syria. But they didn't define what extremists meant. It's just the American definition of extremist. So on that basis, they closed the offices of different Palestinian groups. These Palestinian groups are extremists. Their Syrian offices in Damascus, they were shut down. After operating for decades in Syria, they're shut down because the U.S. considers them to be extremists. So as soon as the Syrians agreed and Ahmed Shara's government agreed to that, it's game over. It's game over. Forget about any kind of Islamic revivalism or revolution in Syria. Already you have the U.S. and Israel are controlling what kind of Islam is supposed to be taught, what kind of Islam is supposed to be preached in Syria. Already you've handed over the keys to Trump and the U.S. government and Netanyahu. You've handed them the keys because you've allowed them to define who the extremists are, and you've said that you're going to comply with any kind of extradition, any type of execution, closing down offices, detainment, whatever, torture. You've already agreed to that back in April. So now it's actually being implemented, and women are being caught in the crossfire, or women are actually being raped and detained. And now Bilal he's raising the alarm.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem for OGN Maps. Today, we're going to discuss a brewing situation in southern Syria concerning Israeli forces. Let's get started. But first, let's talk about what's on this map right here. In the brown area, this is Suwayda. It is controlled by Haqiqat. He is someone who is loyal to Tel Aviv. He flies the Israeli flag and openly says that he wants to be a part of the greater Israeli project. That's Suwayda. This area right over here, this is Israeli-occupied territory in purple. But this line right here is the 1974 line, which was not supposed to be crossed by Israeli forces, but they did it anyway. Yesterday, about 8 different incursions took place, and they went as far as to Beit Jen. Now, why is that important? Why is that significant? Well, if you look at the direction, that's going in this direction, eastwards. Who's in the eastward direction? This one, right over here, Haqiqat's forces. Now, they did pull back into these territories right here, also in purple, but it shows that there seems to be a concerted effort to link this territory with that territory. Now, in the middle is Daraa. Daraa has no government troops there. In March of this year, Benjamin Netanyahu made it very clear he did not want to have any government troops in the Daraa area, any armed individuals. So, in theory...
Bilal doesn't seem to make much of that. Like, so you're telling me in March, Netanyahu demanded from the Shara government, you cannot have any kind of troops or police in Daraa, in that massive area, and he complied. He complied. So who is Shara working for exactly? Is he working for the Syrians, or is he another lapdog of Benjamin Netanyahu? Can someone clarify how it's possible for Netanyahu to give a command like, no, we don't want any? And he had another command actually a couple of months ago with the whole Suwayda crisis in Quneitra and Suwayda, the uprising. Netanyahu told Shara, I don't want any military presence south of Damascus. And as soon as the directions were given, Sharaa retreated. All the troops went back to evacuate. No military presence. So who is Sharaa working for? Like, he's taking orders directly from Netanyahu.
It would be very simple to link these forces with those, or those forces with these, and to take the entire southern part of Syria. Keeping in mind, this is only 30 kilometers from Damascus, 40 kilometers from the Mount Hermon area that we talked about. I hope it's clearer now on the map. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
So this is why I was talking about back in December. Again, I showed you the tweets. I was saying, what is preventing Israel from going straight into Damascus as they please? Like, just taking over all the way into Damascus, the capital. What's preventing them? And I was absolutely right. I mean, what else can you say? Like, this is what's happening. Israel is occupying. Forget about Golan. Like, some of these simps were saying back in December, oh yeah, we're going to take back the Golan Heights. Meanwhile, Israel is just taking everything that they want, like really solidifying their occupation. They took Mount Hermon itself, the most strategic point that's overlooking Damascus. They took that, controlling, just solidifying, fortifying their control, and then expanding eastward. And now Suwaida, Quneitra, Dara, all under threat of Israeli occupation and control, right outside of Damascus. So if you control what's right outside of Damascus, you control Damascus. You control Damascus. And this is what's causing the diplomatic row with Turkey, because Turkey is being pushed out. Turkey is being pushed out, and the Sharaa government apparently is abiding by this.
The Israelis are not going to stop. I mean, brothers and sisters, let's talk business for a second here. Netanyahu's talking about a greater Israeli, greater Israel. And it includes Syria. It's on the map. He ain't trying to hide it. He's putting it out there. You see what I'm saying? And they're taking over territory. They're doing it in Quneitra. They've taken over Suwaidat, which is a big land expanse in southern Syria. They declared that they don't want to have any government troops in Daraa, which is on their border. That too has been followed. And also, we may be looking at any time that all of southern Syria, south of the countryside of Damascus, is gone. And that could happen at any day. That's the reality of the situation. Now, they're talking about, yo, we want to be cool with the SDF that's up in the north and all. Ooh, now that's another issue right there. You see, I'm saying that the Israelis/Americans are not going to stop unless you show them something. I'm going to say this again. They're not going to.
So now the Americans and Israelis are together. Before, he was kind of giving the impression that, well, it's not necessarily the case that the Americans are working with the Israelis. But now it's like, it's just American/Israelis. It's one entity.
Stop unless you show them something. Now, I don't care if you got a rock, you got a stick, an angry dog, or an attack cat. But the reality of the situation is that they will continue to take more territory. Being cool with the Americans is not going to call off the Israelis. Why? Because the Americans and the Israelis are making the same policies in the same rooms. They just play the good cop, bad cop.
I mean, this is a question, like, are the rulers of Syria that retarded that they don't know this? That they don't know that when you're working with America, that you're actually working with Israel? Like, are they that retarded? So either they are that retarded, in which case they're completely incompetent and they're going to drive the country into the dirt. They're going to bury Syria by handing it over to Israel. Or they're agents. They're actually working with, like, that was the plan all along. The plan from the beginning, like, Ahmed Sharaa was made in a lab. He was basically imprisoned because of his terrorist operations that he was involved with in Iraq. And he was retrained by the British. And there's plenty of evidence of this. And it's been admitted by British and US figures. And he's been trained in a lab to be, you know, the next generation of Sunni religious Arab leader that's going to be working for the interests of Israel. That's really what Ahmed Shara is. He was made in a lab, and this is his purpose. And all the people who were simping for him, still simping for him. Oh, I prayed with Ahmed Shara in Idlib. I prayed in the same mosque as him, and he was there for Fajr. And oh, he's our blessed revolutionary. He's the next Khalifa. He's going to bring Islam and Sharia to Syria. Finally, we have our Sunni leaders. Like the retards who were saying things like this and still say things like this, like they were either bots, like agent bots, or they're that stupid. Like they were that stupid to believe it. Because look at what's happening. Like it's inexcusable. Even the people who were positive on Jolani, look at what they're saying now. Like they can't even believe their eyes, and they have to explain things like, "But isn't it the case that doesn't Shara know that?" America is working with Israel, and just because America is giving you guarantees that, oh, we're going to make sure that Netanyahu doesn't do anything untoward, we're going to make sure that Israel plays nice. Just because you're getting those guarantees from Washington, D.C., you know that's worth nothing, right? You know that even if Washington, D.C. wanted to restrain Israel, it wouldn't even matter. Israel is still going to do whatever the hell it wants. Like, don't you understand that? Like, don't you know that? And that's why someone like Bilal, who does have this husn van for Shara and the government and the revolution as a whole, he has to explain something that should be so obvious and something so like the ABCs of geopolitics and foreign relations. He has to explain the ABCs. You know that America is working hand in hand with Israel, like. Is this new information that I'm sharing with you? Because the only way that you can do the actions that you're doing, the only way that you can have the deals that you're making with Washington, D.C. is if you didn't actually know that. That's the only explanation, is that you don't actually know that. That's why you're making these blunders. That's why you're handing over the country and the Syrian people to Israel on the silver platter. It must be because you're ignorant. It must be because you just don't know like the ABCs. I think they know the ABCs. I think that they just don't care. I think that they're just, another, like, when have we seen, tell me, like, in terms of a pattern of history, like, when have we seen an Arab ruler who cared more about Islam and the Muslims and the lives of the people of his country more than a big fat paycheck from the United States? When have we ever seen that, actually? Especially in the past 75 years. When have we actually seen that? I mean, maybe if you go back to Abdel Nasser, maybe Sadat, maybe to some degree, even though he normalized with Israel. But who? Like, where are the Arab leaders? Like, is this something that is common? No, the default is backstabbing the Ummah, betraying the Muslims, making deals with the biggest enemies of Islam, normalizing with the occupiers. That's been the historical pattern. So you're telling me that Jolani was going to come and he's going to break the pattern? He's going to break based on what? Okay, it's possible. It's possible. Even I admitted that. It's possible. Let's just wait and see. But there's all these red flags. There's all these red flags. At what point are we going to wake up? At what point are we going to say, like, yeah, we fell for it again, and we're not going to fall for it anymore? Fortunately, it's not going to happen. It's like a perpetual cycle. And someone like Bilal Abdul Karim is confused. Like, he's very confused about this situation because maybe he doesn't appreciate the way that a lot of these Arab ethno-nationalists think. Like, Bilal comes and says, well, we want to see Ahmed Shara prove that he's not just another version of Bashar al-Assad or another version of these bought-out Arab puppet tyrants. He needs to prove that. There needs to be accountability. But that concept of accountability for leaders doesn't exist amongst these people, amongst these Syrians, and throughout the Arab world, unfortunately. It's just a cult of personality. I like Ahmed Shara because, oh, he has a long beard. Oh, I like Ahmed Shara because, oh, I saw him sitting at the masjid. Wow. Wow. Oh, he's sitting at the mosque. Oh, my God. He cited a verse of the Quran. Oh, I love this guy. You know, that's literally how they think. Oh, you know, he has a beautiful smile. Like that's the kind of relationship that many in the Arab world and the Muslim world, unfortunately more largely, that's the kind of relationship that they have with rulers. It's just a cult of personality. And again, it's not Arabs, also South Asians tend to have this as well. Iranians tend to have this as well. It's just something ubiquitous. And not just Muslims, obviously elsewhere in the world it's the same thing. So when you have a cult of personality, then it doesn't really matter the actions that that ruler takes, even if the actions are completely disastrous and completely contrary to the interests of the people. It's going to be very difficult to get those people to recognize that they've been scammed, that you have put your trust in this person, this personality, this image of a ruler, and it's not what it seems. It's not what it seems. This person is actually your enemy, your worst enemy. Turkey also suffers from this. Turkey also with Ataturk. You know, the cult of Ataturk. Still very strong, even amongst religious Muslims in Turkey. So this is a perennial problem, and I don't know what's the solution. But Bilal has a hard time understanding because Americans in the West, there's not this kind of a relationship with rulers. The ruler is supposed to be someone who serves the people, and the people have to hold that ruler accountable. Obviously, that's the ideal. Many Americans get caught up in the cult of personality as well. Like, look at Trump. Look at Obama. Biden, to a lesser extent, he didn't have the same kind of popularity because he was pretty much a vegetable by the time he got into office. But all the American presidents as well, it's like a cult of personality, and the vast majority of the population is not able to separate their kind of personal parasocial relationship with that leader and actual objective facts, and whether that leader is actually serving the interests of the people or you individually as a citizen or a voter. It's not just Muslims. Okay, let's wrap it up by going to our super chat. What do you have to say about Patrick Bet-David? Syria. We should do more of a Syria analysis because it's really critical to understand the future of the Middle East. But maybe next week. Iron Bro says this makes Bilzerian's interview more satisfying. In what way exactly? PBD interviewed Bilzerian. What's more satisfying about it? Dawa Trucker, appreciate you, bro. Assalamu alaikum, brother Daniel. Let's see if Netanyahu calls heroes, those Zio-Nazi scumbags, the one who crucified a priest, the one who grabbed a child and smashed her on the airport floor, and now this transgender. Yeah, maybe he considers them to be heroes. I don't know. Because you have this pattern, you know, of this, the one who crucified a priest. Yeah, there was this other news story from, was it like 4 months ago, where another Jewish American literally killed a priest, a Christian, by crucifying him. So this is a pattern with the transgender shooting today, mass shooting at a church, and then there was the example of the Jewish man at the Moscow airport who took a toddler and slammed him on his head. There's a pattern with when it comes to Jewish violence. So what are the authorities going to do about it? This should be considered terrorism, right? According to their definitions. Dawa Trucker, thanks for sure. Muslims are ignorant. They don't know nothing about the Holocaust. Rather, Muslims have to experience it themselves so they know what it feels to have your people exterminated. Yeah, maybe this whole Gaza genocide is an educational experience. Ridwan says, I am disappointed the imams haven't visited Congo to see what King Leopold did to the Congolese. Way more than 6 million were killed by King Leopold. They are not Are they not white enough for them? Or Jews visit Bosnia or Algeria? Yeah, why aren't the Jewish rabbis, their leaders, visiting Algeria, the Algerian genocide? How many millions of Algerian Muslims were killed by the French? Or Bosnia, more recently, Srebrenica, more recently. Why aren't the rabbis going and visiting Bosnia or Congo? Good question. Dawa Trucker, thank you for your super chat. That Shaitan Churchill shouldn't even be hailed as a hero by Muslims living in the UK. The things he said about Muslims, the Caliphate, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam shouldn't be let go scot-free, but should feel super offended. Yeah, it's really bad if you have a Muslim who's praising Churchill. Muhammad, thank you for your super chat. May Allah protect and guide us during this difficult time, especially when some of the quote-unquote imams that you mentioned keep speaking to Muslims as if we're guilty and how we need to be soft-spoken to the oppressors. It's frustrating. For sure, agree with that. Muslim Boogeyman says, thank you, brother, for your super chat. How would Patsy Beta Dirtbag react to someone interviewing Erdogan on the so-called Armenian genocide? Interesting. I wonder how he would react. Dawa Trucker, appreciate it. Surah Al Imran, verse 112. Indignity is put over them wherever they may be, except when under a covenant of protection from Allah and from men they have drawn on themselves the wrath of Allah is put over them. Verse of the Quran. Muslim Boogeyman says, without lies, Pisreal dies. Son of Andalus won't be reading that. Dawa Trucker, I won't be reading that one either. Disqualified Dad, salam. Keep up the good work, brother. Wa alaikum salam. Chabart says, Daniel, could you get on PBD or on Candace Owens or even Tucker show? It's time to get us on these shows. We now know the language and MIO of Muslim children killed. Still won't have any of us on. Yeah, it's very doubtful that they're going to be platforming a Muslim like me. Even the more mainstream Muslims, the more cucked Muslims also are not going to get spots on these podcasts or these shows, especially with someone like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, or I don't know, they could prove me wrong. West Bankrupt, thank you for your super chat. My cousin Bilal used to be a Madkhali. Alhamdulillah, you saved him. Alhamdulillah, that's good news. Red pilling Wahhabis is what we do on Muslim Skeptic. It's been a disaster for the Wahhabi dawah. Alhamdulillah. Dawa Trucker says, so his plan was to free Gaza by kicking out Hamas, but in reality, they must destroy all of Gaza or do it. The lying scumbag lying through his fangs, since when Gazans decided to support their murderer, what a damn liar. Very true. A lot of lies from Netanyahu. Son of Andalus says, Armenians also helped the Crusaders and the Mongols. Not sure about that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Chabad says, so true, Daniel. There are estimations that Russians killed 5.5 million Muslims in under 60 years, more like 40 years, confirmed by ChatGPT. Yeah, the extent of death by the Russians since the 17th century was massive. Millions displaced and arguably millions. 1 million Circassians were killed. Muslim Circassians were killed by the Russians. And there were Christian collaborators in the Caucasus, in all of these lands, in the Balkans. So that's the context of what happened to Armenians in 1915 and 1917. Assalamu alaikum, brother Daniel. Even the U.S. president can get grilled about the pettiest things, but not when it's the prime minister of a genocidal regime. Yeah, that's true. Look at how much grilling the U.S. media gives to Donald Trump compared to all the softball interviews and press conferences that they give to Netanyahu. Really tells you who owns this country. Akhi, sorry to bug you again, but any chance us curious viewers can get the scrapped Genius of Islam 4 as an unofficial download? Doesn't have to be on YouTube. Sorry, bro. You'll have to wait for the official version, inshallah. But I'm actively working on it. Look, I have to rewrite because I'm the problem. The reason that I had to scrap the previous version because of me. I did a poor job writing the first script. I mean, it wasn't a first script. It went through many drafts, and what I ended up actually recording, so I wasn't satisfied with it. It was boring. It was boring, and you wouldn't be able to sit through it. Even though the information is good, the information is something you've never seen before anywhere. But it's just I'm not satisfied with just having good content. It has to be presented in the best way that'll be really mind-blowing. So that's what I'm working on. Chill Yemeni guy says, a weak saying attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, our movement will surely exceed 1,000 years, but not 2,000. Is this just the beginning of the end? Allahu alam. The Ummah has been around for 15 centuries almost. So are we going to complete 15 centuries? Allahu alam. Maybe not. Let alone 2,000. Brother Bilal is clearly showing Israel is slowly taking over Syria. It's evident as daylight. Shara is being a good boy. Yes, true. Thank you, Dawa Trucker, for your many super chats. Really appreciate it, bro. Any super chat supports the channel and it helps with the algorithm. So thank you so much. I think that Bilal, our brother Bilal, is seeing the light. And I'm worried actually about brother Bilal. I'm worried about his safety in Syria because it's going to be pretty soon that they're going to start cracking down. They're going to start cracking down. It's already started. It starts with the supposed extremists. Who knows if they're actually extremists or they're affiliated with Daesh or whatever. But then they start moving down the line. So funny how PBD and his minion were grilling you and Jake about Sharia. I dare him to do this type of grilling to a Jew. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. Okay, that is the super chats. Any other comments in the regular chat? Anything else? No. Okay, bros. Thank you for watching, brothers and sisters. Really appreciate your support and your attention. Who are the top fans? I haven't been watching the top fans. Looks like our top fan today was Dawa Trucker, mashallah. Number 1 spot. Really appreciate your support, bro. Number 2 is Haqiqat1. Is the number 2 top fan. Number 3 is West Bank. What? YouTube is not showing me the full. Let me just. West Bank. I don't see the full name. And then Brother Muhammad M is number 4. Famo is number 5. Muslim Boogeyman, our moderator, is 6. Son of Andalus is 7. Ridwan is 8. Ridwan A2182. Yusuf W5B2V is number 9. And Chill Yemeni Guy is number 10. That's our top 10 fans for this live stream. Really appreciate everyone paying attention and supporting, engaging with the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video as well. Hit the notification bell. Subscribe to our newsletter. The link to the newsletter is below in the description for MuslimSkeptic.com. And be on the lookout. I'm going to be involved in the debate. A pre-recorded debate is being set for this week. I'm going to be debating a Jew, a very big supporter of Israel, and I think he might also be a homosexual. So that debate is going to be Islam versus Judaism. It's going to be pre-recorded. We'll see if it actually happens. But that's the plan for later this week. And then next week, I'm debating another Jewish individual, Adam King, who is associated with Alex Jones and InfoWars. I'm going to be debating him as well. Islam versus Judaism. That should be interesting. It's going to be moderated by Tyson Hockley. Tyson Hockley did a moderated kind of semi-debate discussion with Gary, the numbers guy. You might have remembered that. It's on the channel. So Tyson Hockley is moderating this debate that I'll have with Adam King, inshallah, next week. And I'll announce it in advance, the exact timing, so you can set your notifications. And then I challenged Avery of God Logic to debate me. And I'm still waiting. He's awfully quiet. Avery is awfully quiet. He's a yapper. He likes to talk a lot of trash. But now suddenly he's gone deathly silent. Deathly silent after I've challenged him to debate me on the autistic dilemma. Strange. Very curious why he has nothing to say. Suddenly he has nothing to say, even though he likes to talk a lot. So we'll see. Hopefully he'll accept the challenge, and we'll debate that within the next couple of weeks. That should be explosive. That should be very interesting. So a lot of great content coming out, inshallah, that I think you'll enjoy. Next Haqiqatjou next week, probably. We'll see. Stay tuned for that. And inshallah, we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.